Race car drivers have a different concept of fear. It's not that they lack it, it's that they learn how to ignore it, push it down, and suspend the concept of danger. It's why race car drivers can push to the limit and past it. It's why driving over 150 miles an hour an inch from a concrete wall becomes almost second nature. For those competing in GT World Challenge America's GT Rivals Esports Invitational, finding comfort in a digital racing machine has been a learning curve. So what happens when you put these drivers on a virtual version of one of the fastest, most dangerous tracks in the world? They run laps, lots of laps, all to build up the confidence to climb Mount Panorama and to push down the fear from going back down. Today, you're not watching drivers race each other. They're racing Mount Panorama Circuit. Welcome to Bathurst, Australia for round number 7 of the 2020 GT Rivals Esports Invitational. My name's Kyle Heyer, joined by GT World Challenge America's Ryan Marine. Today we tackle the mountain for 60 minutes of sports car racing, Ryan.
Well, I think you said it perfectly. This is a battle between driver and racetrack just as much as it is a battle between the race car drivers and their cars themselves. Mount Panorama, Bathurst, just an iconic name in motorsports. Some of the most iconic scenes in motorsports happen around this place. It is a thrilling lap, and they're going to be doing lap after lap of it around Bathurst. 60 minutes our race distance a little bit later today. Can't wait to see what the stars and cars of GT Rivals have in store for us.
You can see it on the screen right now, the beautiful Mount Panorama Circuit. You climb up a mountain on one side, Ryan, you head down the other. Over 20 turns, over 6 kilometers of elevation change, high-speed corners, concrete walls. There is nothing quite like dropping down the mountain here, and we're going to start this race. We're in practice right now, but we're going to start this race in darkness at 5 a.m. leading into the daylight. And coming over the crest into skyline, you're going to have the sun in your eyes. It's going to be a wild experience for all these drivers in this field.
Well, you said it, and really it is a unique challenge because there's not much in the way of artificial lighting around this track. And this track really does have just about a little bit of everything, right? It's part street circuit, part natural terrain road course, part drag strip, part roller coaster. I mean, it literally puts just about any challenge you could imagine at a race car driver and race team trying to set up a car. And then you throw in the fact that they're trying to do it in the dark to get things started as the sun rises, in some portions of this track going directly into the rising sun. Just a remarkable challenge, and one that brings out the very best of the best when you come to GT racing around the mountain.
Well, let's have a quick look at here at our track map this afternoon as we look at Mount Panorama Circuit. 6.2 kilometers around here. It all starts with a left-hander. They call it Hell Corner, Ryan. That's not because it's the worst corner on the track. I don't think it is, but it's the first one, and it's very difficult. Then it leads you up the mountain straight into turn 2, Griffin's Bend, and then you climb through the cutting uphill towards the top end of the course at McPhillamy Park, and it is quite tight as you climb the hill.
Oh, definitely not much room for more than 2 abreast, if that, in any of the uphill portions of the track, and it's very, very fast where it's the tightest. It's remarkably challenging, and then once you crest that hill right around the McPhillamy Park area, all of a sudden you go over Skyline, and it's right down the hill to the iconic Dipper. You keep on going down to Forest Elbow, and that's what leads you out to the Conrad Straight, down toward the Chase, a very high speed, very challenging corner that leads then into Murray's Corner, the final corner on the straightaway, and a great passing opportunity as well before you head back to the pit straight.
The Chase is one of the fastest braking zones I've ever seen in any track in the world. That you're coming in there well over 160, 170 miles an hour in these GT3 cars. So a lot of challenges on the stack for today, but things aren't quite as normal as they usually are here on GT World for the GT Rivals competition, Ryan. A couple technical issues this afternoon are leaving us with a little bit of extra practice time to cover before we get into the race. There's issues with a couple drivers not being able to get into the server, and that means that we can't compete, at least not fully. So we're looking at a potential reschedule for this event, but either way, we will be running this race today with who is already here.
Yeah, that's the plan as it stands right now, and I think very much this is all up in the air, but we plan to go forward with whatever we have here. There might be a reschedule of the official race. Remember, that's important. There's no points on the line, but it is a chance to lock yourself into our championship race next week at Kyalami in virtual South Africa, where we'll be crowning our GT Rivals champion. The top 5 finishers from the previous rounds of the series will lock themselves in with a spot on the championship grid, and there will also be a race-in opportunity from Kyalami looking ahead to next week. So for some of these drivers who have had good results, but maybe not a top 5. If they want to guarantee a spot in that championship race, they need to get a top 5 here, and that's why it's so difficult for some of these guys who can't get connected right now. Maybe there's some of those that are trying to find a way into that championship race, and we're going to give them every opportunity possible within a realistic window here to get logged in, to be able to get in their cars, get a couple of practice laps before we go qualifying, and then we'll have our full 60-minute race a little bit later. Whether or not that's an official race, that's TBD at the moment, so bear with us as we try and work out all the technical gremlins. But bonus coverage for you folks, that's the bright side, as we've got GT3 cars going around the mountain.
We got Kevin Bowman, the number 90 here this week, and he's carrying with us the helmet cam as we head down the hill into the Dipper. This section of the racetrack is so challenging to get right. You're threading the needle between these walls, and especially on lap number 1 in traffic. If someone makes a mistake, it doesn't even have to be you. If someone else makes a mistake, it's going to be a log jam down there as we ride on board. Kevin Bowman now through Forest Elbow onto the back straightaway, heading towards the chase.
Because of the tight confines and because of the wall and because of the elevation change, those corners are basically blind. So you're right, there could be an accident way up the road from you, but unless you've got a spotter watching that piece of road or you're paying close attention to the relative screen, you might not know that you've got a stoppage just around the bend, and that will catch out, I'm sure, a few of our competitors, more than a few in the race today. But that section you talked about, climbing the mountain and then coming back down, that back down part in particular, such a rhythm section. When you get in a rhythm, it's really rewarding, but it's hard to do and it's easy to come undone. Just the slightest mistake and your race might be over.
There's Kevin Bowman, the CrowdStrike Racing number 90. And again, CrowdStrike, one of our amazing sponsors that has come on board to help us out with the GT Rivals season. You see him at the bottom of the screen. Now we got, of course, Assetto Corsa Competizione providing an amazing virtual representation of Mount Panorama circuit on which we are racing today. Of course, ASUS and Republic of Gamers and Tough Gaming providing giveaways every single week that you can participate in the chat off to the side. We'll make sure to remind you what is at stake this week, including a one-day Skip Barber Racing School opportunity, which that doesn't come up very much. So make sure you pounce on that. Fanatec and SimLab for providing some excellent sim racing equipment to use in either Assetto Corsa Competizione or anything else of your choice. Of course, Champion Motorsports providing the servers for this afternoon and kind of keeping everything on lockdown in terms of the penalties as well. So they've done an excellent job. Of course, AWS and Julian behind the scenes routing this all over the country and the world. Of course, CrowdStrike we mentioned. Pirelli tires. Basically, the grip between the road and the car this afternoon, Ryan. You got to make sure that you have those tires gripped up as you head down the hill.
And that's something that people maybe new to sim racing aren't aware of, but these simulations do such a good job modeling tire wear that actually managing that tire over the course of a 60-minute race. Remember, no pit stops in GT Rivals, at least no scheduled pit stops. We do see them from time to time, but that's a sign that something has gone awry. So you do have to take care of tires. Tire wear is a big storyline. It'll be interesting starting at night, starting in the dark conditions. The track will be cool. The grip level should be quite high, and inverse of what we've seen at several of our races, which have gone from day to night, and therefore gone from less grip to more grip. We're going to see the opposite of that as the track heats up, but you're also seeing cars put rubber down, which adds to the grip level. So maybe it comes out as even. I guess we'll have to wait and see. That's going to be something to keep an eye on, though, over the course of the race. Maybe certain manufacturers take care of their tires better than others. Certain drivers take care of their tires better than others, as we see Patrick Byrne bounce off the outside retaining wall there. So easy to do, and I think he just got caught out with Pesek right in front of him in that pink car, just slowing down maybe a bit unexpectedly, and that's all it takes. That section there, if you're running in traffic, is so difficult, and I think the first few laps of this race are going to be fraught with moments just like the one we saw.
Looks like you mentioned the track temperature. Well, I don't have it in freedom units, but it's 37 degrees Celsius out there right now on the track surface. That's pretty toasty. 29 degrees in the air, so the track surface is definitely picking up a lot of heat, and over the course of the race, that's going to cause this track to get very hot and slick as Byrne runs a little bit wide at the exit of the final corner. As we again thank the rest of our sponsors: Rebellion, Total, Optima Battery, Skip Barber Racing School, and 511, of course, SRO America, for providing us with the opportunity to be right here today on the GT World YouTube channel. So thanks again for joining us. If you're brand new to GT World, if you've never watched one of these streams before, make sure you drop it a like. If you're on Twitch, make sure you follow. If you're on Facebook, drop a like there as well. So again, in a kind of a holding pattern here, waiting to see if we can get some technical issues resolved before we launch in this race. I'm not sure if this will be an official GT Rivals event or not, but if it is, it's going to be 60 minutes on the schedule. One of the drivers that was having trouble getting in was Brian Heitkotter, Ryan, and of course he's been so successful, so dominant this season, it would be a real shame to have a race without him.
Yeah, that's right. He's won 4 straight, and all but one of our races so far, he's picked up the win, and he's one of only 2 drivers to this point in the season to have top 10 finishes in each of their starts. And if we were keeping points the way that we do in the normal GT World Challenge America Championship, he would be leading by 80 points, 8-0, just a massive lead. He's been so fast week in and week out, constantly contending in the top 5. It's we've basically never seen him outside of the top 5. So he's had this field on lockdown. But what's cool about this GT Rivals format is the fact that at the end of this, it's not points that's going to settle it. It's going to be a championship race. So you can throw those points right out the window when we get to Kyalami next week.
And we were briefly taking a look at the other driver that has top 10s in every single race this season. That is Carl Whitmer in the number 22. And you mentioned the kind of faux point standings. He would have been second coming into this race, and he's been amazingly consistent. Maybe not quite as quick as everyone else on raw pace, but top 10s in every single round so far, Ryan. He continues to put on impressive performances. Very much under the radar, though.
Yeah, credit where credit is due. His brother Patrick is the one that gave me those point standings. I didn't sit there with my abacus and tally them out myself. So big thanks to Patrick for sending me those. And you're right, Carl, under the radar to a large degree, but he's been quick and he's been consistent and he's been showing very well here at Bathurst, 3rd fastest on the leaderboard at the moment. Right now we're looking at Kevin Boehm, who's another one that has been a constant fixture at the top of the leaderboard throughout the course of our season so far. Maybe one of the revelations of this GT Rival series. And I think one of the things that's neat about it is it takes drivers from every level of the SRO Motorsports America Championship, because not just the GT3 drivers from GT World Challenge America, but guys from the touring car ranks like Kevin Boehm right there mixing it up with some of the GT3 drivers. You've got Pirelli GT4 America well represented. You throw in the sim racers and some guest drivers from other forms of the sport, including the European side of the SRO Championship. The Asian Championship has been represented too, and it's just a who's who of SRO drivers. So it's been really fun to see, and it's allowed guys like Kevin Boehm to shine as he's got to navigate the corner and that Bentley there for a brief moment. But Kevin, I think, has done a tremendous job. His credentials in touring cars speak for themselves, but a really adept sim racer, and maybe makes you wonder what he could do in a GT3 car. Maybe one of these days the DXDT team will put him behind the wheel.
See the yellow and white flags waving for a slow-moving vehicle at the exit of Forest Elbow, so he'll exit the corner. Great onboard shots there as we head onto the back straightaway. There is David Perrell in the number 111 car, and he's been so impressive in the couple rounds that he's run so far. Think back to Suzuka, got that penalty, the very famous, infamous penalty with Brian Heitkotter. Ended up going out to Barcelona last week. Wasn't quite as close to the front as maybe we expected to see him, but right now, second in practice.
Well, he wasn't there for most of the race, but he ended up on the podium. So I think he ended up in second in that race, but there were some penalties and some disconnections actually late in that race that helped him get to that point. But again, when we talk about drivers with a great sim racing pedigree, David's name comes towards the top of that list as his legion of fans who flood our comment sections. And a big welcome to all the Coach Dave Academy fans that are here with us. It's great to have you with us on the broadcast once again. He's done a lot of real-world racing, of course, racing in the SRO over in Europe, but he's been very busy as a driver coach on the sim racing side with his Coach Dave Academy, which has him very well prepared. One of our other podium finishers last week, actually, John Miller, said in our post-race interview that he bought one of the setup packages that David has available through Coach Dave Academy, and that's what helped him be on the pace so quickly. So the influence goes pretty deep. David's a very fast driver, South African African who's now domiciled in the UK, and just one of those guys that as soon as he showed up in our championship, he was immediately at the front. And I think as soon as his name showed up on the entry list, that's what we were hoping for.
Next week, we'll head to the season finale at Kyalami, and I think Peril is really looking forward to that. He expressed so much interest in that track because that's the home track for Peril as we head into it next week. So I'm sure that he'll be topping the time charts into next week's finale. But he headed down the hill now through the S's here at Mount Panorama Circuit, and then into the Dipper. Downhill, the left front tire leaving the ground as you come down the hill there, Ryan. One little mistake there, and instead of driving a race car, you're driving a ping pong ball if you get it a little bit wrong. It's going to be a hard hit. Left, back to the right, back to the left again, over and over and over.
And then you just got to hope you don't get hit by one of the other ping pong balls that's coming down the mountain right after you at a pretty good clip. So, yeah, it's just a breathtaking piece of tarmac. There's nothing else like it in the world. Like I said, some of this is public road most of the year, and then parts of the track are more specialized. So there's only a limited number of events that can take place at Bathurst, which makes it all the more special. You don't get to do a ton of testing there, and it really does bring the top talent to the front. And again, no surprise when you look at our leaderboard here, the names that appear there, although we have one newcomer. We can talk about that in a moment. But I did want to touch on the car that's up in front, this Bentley, because for Bentley, the real Liqui Moly Bathurst 12-hour earlier this year was a huge breakthrough for this Bentley GT racing program. They've been hard at work. Brian Gush was the one who really brought Bentley back into motorsports. He's since retired, and but nevertheless, his legacy carries on. And in a lot of respects, the victory that they had at Bathurst was a testament to all the work that Brian put in to get this Bentley racing program to the level where it is. And that was that long coveted, long distance race win that they've been looking for since this GT3 program came online.
So you mentioned a couple new names. Well, there's one of them right at the top of the board. Scott Michaels in the number 134, driving a BMW M6 this week as he chases JT Tammy down the long back straightaway here. And we have not seen a lot of these BMWs out here this season, but Scott Michaels takes it right to the top of the board and affiliated with CrowdStrike, and has had a really good start to the race this week. I'm sure he just is really wanting to get rolling here as we continue to wait in a holding pattern for some technical things to get sorted out. But Scott Michaels, really impressive so far, leads Bohm by 93 thousandths on the timesheets right now.
And again, when you look at his background, it's not a surprise that he's here featuring at the top. He runs for the Valkenhorst team, which people should be familiar with for all that they've done with BMWs over the years, GT racing and prototype racing both. He's part of their sim racing arm and actually finished second in a very competitive 24 hours of the Nürburgring on the Nordschleife just about a month or so ago. So neat to see him roped in here, brings some sim racing pedigree, has that tie-in with the sponsor CrowdStrike, which is great, and great to have the BMW right there at the top as well. Love that car. It's kind of like the Bentley. You look at it compared to some of the other cars like a Ferrari or an NSX, and you don't necessarily look at high-performance supercar, but nevertheless, with the SRO and the balance of performance system that's in place, there's an even playing field for everyone, and you see some very good results.
Now, I was mentioning earlier before we went live here, the diversity in manufacturers yet again. And this has been something we've noticed for the entirety of the GT Rivals Championship. Look at this. BMW, Mercedes, Acura, Ferrari, Audi, McLaren, Porsche, another Acura, another Mercedes, and a Lexus in your top 10. That is amazing diversity, and that just goes to show you, how great GT3 racing really is, especially here in the SRO Intercontinental GT Challenge. I think we've been really pleasantly surprised at how equal the BOP is, and I'm sure every driver will complain that their car is slower than the next. But again, we're looking at the timesheets, and I'm seeing nothing of the sort.
No, exactly. And look, hey, that's their job, whether it's in the sim world or the real world. Their job is to lobby. That's how you play the BOP game, and we all get that, that's for sure. And sometimes the grievances are real. Sometimes they're a bit more on the imagined side, but that's the way of it. And if that's the price we have to pay to have the diversity of the grid that we have, I'm willing to pay it several-fold, because the thing that I love about GT3 racing is so many different types of cars, front engine, rear engine, mid-engine, just the visuals, naturally aspirated or forced induction, so many different ways of making speed, and yet they all come out basically even at the end. It's really remarkable. And when you go to a race in person, I think that's highlighted, because you get to hear the different sounds, you get to see them, the different shapes of the cars, and and I think it really is a unique tapestry.
So we're just waiting on an official update here to keep you updated on what the plan is going forward for this afternoon. Again, technical issues on a system-wide technical issue is what it's being referred to as. So again, still in a holding pattern here, just waiting to see if we're going to proceed with what we have or if we're going to reschedule. It looks like we are going to reschedule. It's just a question of what the plan is for today. So we're just continuing to wait for another update on that. Some drivers that are missing today that might be happy about a reschedule here, Ryan. Tom O'Gorman, Kenton Cook, and both Amarillo Racing cars not here today.
All of those are drivers we expect to contend in the top 10, and what we've seen out of the Murillo camp is to contend for poles and maybe even podium finishes. Both Kenny Murillo and Christian Shimshak have been incredibly fast to this point in our championship, so definitely for them that would be a nice bonus, and the Murillo guys and Tom too, I think, to try and lock themselves into that championship race, that would be a big deal. So any kind of added opportunity for them, I'm sure, would be welcome.
Running board now with John Miller in the 38 car. Had a really good run last week. Sits 20th on the timesheets right now. But watch the speeds here as we climb into the chase. Speeds over almost 300 kilometers an hour. 270. You see the hand reach down to adjust the brake bias down there as he heads into the corner. 270 kilometers is no joke here, Ryan. You're on the brakes in one of the hardest braking zones in motorsports. And there's a big, tall curb on the inside, so you have to thread the needle after coming down that straight.
And there have been some big crashes there over the years. I go back to Tim Pappas had a big crash there that had him laid up for quite a while, going back a few years at this track. And it's a high commitment corner. There's no question about that. I know, Kyle, you're in the producer's chair here, but I was wondering, since we're on board, we've been talking about what a unique track this is. What if we laid out and just rode along for a lap since we're in practice?
Let's do it. We're going to go silent and just stay with us. Just riding on board there with Scott Hargrove in the number 96 Mercedes, got into the wall at the exit of Forest Elbow. But it looks like, I'm just trying to read the updates here, Ryan, to make sure I'm giving you the right information. So the plan for now is that at the conclusion of this practice session, which will be advanced in about 5 minutes, we're going to wrap this broadcast up. We're going to try this again, I believe, midweek before the season finale at Kyalami on Sunday. So there's make sure you're following GT World Challenge America on Facebook and on Twitter and Instagram, everywhere else, to be updated on when we're going to give this another go. Because it looks like we are going to cut this broadcast. We'll try this again when things are sorted out. So again, technical issues service-wide that are preventing some drivers, including the most dominant driver of the season, Brian Heitkotter, from getting into the server. And there's a handful, there's about another 10 drivers that didn't make it in, and neither can the stewards. So that's going to prevent us from having a safely moderated race, as well as having a full grid. So we're going to try this again later this week. So make sure again that you're following GT World Challenge America on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, to make sure that you're updated on when we're going to try this again. So Ryan, looks like we're going to have an abbreviated broadcast today, but this is the worst thing as a race car driver, to be prepared for a race and then have to put it all back down and save all your efforts for another day. That's one of the most distracting things as a race car driver.
Now it's like going through a rain delay like we saw at Spa last year, where the rain was so torrential during the overnight period of that 24 hours, where it was actually flooding on the track, that we had to call time on the race for a little bit there. And the hard part was not knowing when the race was going to resume. Now it's a bit of a different situation here, but when you talk about a third to a quarter of our field, for really no reasons that aren't anyone's fault. This is a system-wide problem, as you said, Kyle, being unable to join in, and perhaps more importantly, quite frankly, not having the stewards, because we have had from the CMS group live stewarding, which has been a huge help to these massive undertakings that these sim racing events have become. When we don't have the stewards in able to help adjudicate issues on track, I think the hand was forced a little bit there. It's a real shame, because I know everyone's been putting in a lot of work and was ready to go. Hopefully, on the bright side, this opens up opportunities for some people who wouldn't have been available today to join in later on. And for us, it's a little dress rehearsal. Whoa, that was a big slide there. Tag on the wall for Shelby Blackstock. But a little dress rehearsal for us, and hopefully we can find a time to reschedule this and get to the track. This track deserves a race. I love Bathurst. I love GT3 cars around here, and I look forward to that opportunity when the day comes. Well,
some people always ask, what are the differences between real world racing and sim racing? And, this is, I would say, another similarity. Now, it's for a different reason, but there's been a lot of races where you go and it's a complete thunderstorm or a rain out, or there's, in crazy cases, track issues. I know Daytona has been set on fire. Think back to the Daytona 500 back in 2012. They were able to continue that race later in the evening, but there's often times when things have to be rescheduled for one reason or another. So not really a change there. You can just imagine, a swarm of 1 million angry kangaroos bounding across the racetrack. Maybe that's the reason why we're going to have to reschedule this one today.
Yeah, you've been asking for that kangaroo mod. This would be the time to set it loose.
I'm telling you, that would be, if Assetto Corsa, if Kunos is listening, if we can get kangaroos and local cautions for kangaroos bounding across the track, that is immersion level 1000. I'm all on board with that.
That's right. You throw that in with the high-quality curbing we've got in this, and this is the game for you, Kyle.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, Assetto Corsa, they've done an amazing job replicating these cars and these tracks. And again, technical issues are just kind of part of how things work. Of course, not everything is within the realm of control. There's obviously things that are out of control of both Kunos ACC, of course, Sim TV, where again, we're producing these behind the scenes here. There's always things that are out of our control, so that's just the case today. So again, we appreciate everyone joining, and we're going to cut this in a couple minutes, just waiting for this session to finish out, and we'll show a Bathurst recap video before we go quiet for the afternoon, and we want everyone to enjoy the rest of the Memorial Day weekend. I didn't even know what day it was. We've been so busy working behind the scenes here, Ryan, but for everybody at home, make sure you're staying safe and enjoying the beautiful weather. I'm up in the Northeast here in upstate New York, and it's absolutely gorgeous outside.
Yeah, beautiful day here at Indianapolis. Should have been Indianapolis 500 day today, but it's a brave new world we all live in, and that'll be rescheduled to later in the year, and it gives us a chance to have some fun with some sim racing as we've been doing the last several weeks. Really excited about being a part of this and what the SRO has done. I think this GT Rivals thing has been a real success and a great way to showcase the immense talent in the SRO America paddock, and can't wait to see. Wow! Well, that was the end of the session. Quite a way to finish it. But anyway, can't wait to see the friends from the paddock on the real track here soon. But this has been a good stopgap to fill in the time in between.
Right, and of course we've got Kyle Lamy next Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And like I said before, for those of you that just joined, a server-wide technical issue that are preventing some drivers and some crew members from Champion Motorsports who steward these events. They are unable to get in and preventing us from having a competitive and fair environment today. So we're going to reschedule this one for later in the week. Again, make sure that you're following GT World Challenge America on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram to get updates on when we're going to give this another go. In the meantime, I am going to stay live here just for a few more minutes just to make sure we get confirmation on when this is going to go down. But again, if you're joining us again, thank you for jumping in here today. I do want to talk about a couple more drivers before we go. Nelson Mason in the number 10 car has a new partnership this week, from my understanding, Ryan, and he's got a new livery on board this car, the Racers 360 Niagara car, as he heads up Mountain Straight and heads towards Griffin's Corner. So he's got a new livery, a new car this week as well, moving to the Audi platform.
That's right, and I think that's part of an effort that he is undertaking to get into the SRO America paddock at some point this year. We certainly hope that's the case. He's been really fast here on ACC since he's joined us for GT Rivals, has that lengthy pedigree in European open wheel racing, and would be a fine addition to the grid. It would be interesting to see him racing at home. He hasn't done much North American racing, despite the fact he's from Canada, but it would be a welcome addition, like I said, and perhaps what we're seeing right here is a sign of things to come. That's certainly the hope.
So heading down the hill again here at Mount Panorama Circuit, and we've got we're not completely committed just yet to being off for the day here, so we're just making sure that behind the scenes, lots of people working as Mason heads down the hill. And JT Tammy in the 97, the lone Lexus out there today. He's been driving that Lexus quite a bit more. I think he's the only driver to have driven a Lexus this season, and it's a good-looking race car. It sounds great as well.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's painted up in what I think is an Emile Frey livery from the European SRO series. We don't get to see that Lexus too often. That's one place it's been campaigned. We've seen it in other series in the States and a little bit over in Japan as part of Super GT, but I wish we could see more of it. It's really cool looking. It sounds great also, I have to say. And it was really cool, actually, if we go back to the start of the year, to see Kyle Busch of NASCAR fame racing one of these at Daytona earlier in the year. That was pretty neat, unique opportunity there. But yeah, JT has done a great job in this car. He's one of the Champion Motorsports drivers, one of the sim racers that's been with us, and we've certainly enjoyed having him. And like I said, every time he's been in the field, it's been good because it adds that extra little bit of diversity when he brings that Lexus out on track.
Well, I can report that because of the hard-working Kudos does behind the scenes, it looks like we've got whatever the issue was sort of resolved. Brian Heitkotter is here, and looks like he's going to go up on the air jacks here and maybe prepare to run some laps. So I'm not sure what the plan is now. I thought we were going off, but maybe not. So we're going to stay tuned here. Don't go anywhere as we work on getting the rest of the drivers in the field and ready to go racing this afternoon, potentially. We'll see what the deal is here.
Yeah, everyone's working. I thought we thought we had a plan, but looks like maybe there was a breakthrough, and that would be a good thing for sure. So stick with us. We will see what happens. But great to see at least some of the guys who've been struggling to get in. Now, the problem is they've not had much practice. Presumably, they've been practicing earlier in the week, but you know, that's it's going to be a detriment for them. Plus, they're missing out here on some of this qualifying time as well, and I'm not sure if that's something that can be adjusted once the session has already started. So we'll see, I guess, is the short answer here. And again, it's more than just getting the drivers connected. We also have to get the stewards connected. They're such a big part of this too. So fingers crossed it can all be worked out and we can get back going.
All right, so it looks like Heitcotter's out here. Jacob Ruud in the 810 in the classic BMW livery. He's on pit lane, and I think there was a few more. Thomas Laster in the 717 is working on joining as well. So we've expanded our grid by 3 or 4 cars as the rest of the field works their way around and gets set up for some warm-up laps. And have we had some lap times recorded? Yes, we have. Scott Michaels, a 2-minute .906. That's a really quick lap. We've seen laps in the 2-minute range, but that's about the quickest one I've seen all afternoon.
Yeah, that is not a warm-up lap. That is a flyer. That is really fast, and I suspect, based on the qualifying times that we've seen, that's going to put him solidly in the top 5. Now, not sure what we saw in that practice that preceded this qualifying session, if guys were running in qualifying trim or practicing their race running, but so there might be a little bit more out there to be found. Track conditions may have changed as well. I don't have those in front of me, but nevertheless, I think that lap will stand up as very, very good as we see him run a little bit wide there at the top. Now here through Skyline, and just going to have to abort that lap after a bit of a wild run.
Kyle Marcelli in the number 80 Racers Edge Motorsports car, again teammates to Shelby Blackstock, and we've seen these Acuras have a pretty decent season. Of course, one of their other main drivers, Tom O'Gorman, not here. He's at a real racetrack this weekend. I'm sure he's enjoying his time, but again, we were just talking about the potential of the reschedule. Well, some of the drivers that were not here were going to get a chance to run this in the midweek, but it looks like that may or may not be the case as we get more and more drivers set up in the field. We've got Drake Burgoon here now in the 415, so it's looking more and more likely that we will be racing this afternoon. Still waiting on an official word. I thought we had an official word, Ryan, but we don't. Yeah. So we're still kind of in a holding pattern.
Both. That's right, exactly. So the best we can do is just keep pushing on. So here is Marcelli, like you said, driving for Racers Edge Motorsports in real life, the reigning Pro-Am champion, along with Martin Barkey, who the pair of Canadians, they teamed up and were really, really strong last year. This NSX platform was extremely strong last year. And we also saw the real-time racing run NSX win a ton of races. And really, if it weren't for a strange technicality in the points, we would have seen Dane Cameron as the Pro-Am champion. But the way it broke down, Dane had several co-drivers. He was the pro in those lineups. And you can't have a solo pro win a Pro-Am championship, as we found out. So Dane had to settle for the knowledge that he would have had enough points to win a championship. Still won a ton of races, but the actual championship went to Kyle and Martin, who had a really good year together. Kyle's a really tremendous driver, Canadian driver, as I said earlier, was on the road to Indy for quite some time in open wheel racing, but has made the transition very successfully to sports cars and has really found a home, I think, with Racers Edge, and specifically in this NSX. It's been very, very fast.
So Marcelli getting a bit of distance here. We saw him use the slipstream heading down into the chase. That's going to be a big topic of discussion today. And now we have an official word, Ryan. We will be racing this afternoon, albeit about 40 minutes behind schedule. So finally about ready to go racing. We got 12 minutes left in qualifying. So everybody you're seeing on track now is whoever's supposed to be here. So finally, thank you to Assetto Corsa Competizione and kudos for getting things together. They worked diligently behind the scenes. Now we are go for racing for an official round this afternoon. So thanks everybody for getting us set up this afternoon. And unfortunately for a couple of those drivers, they're not going to get quite as much practice time, but that's going to make it all the more interesting as we hit green flag here in about 15 minutes.
Yeah, not much practice time, maybe not much qualifying time as well. Some of these guys still have not turned laps, and whether that's because of incidents or because they've been struggling to get connected, I'm not sure. As we look at Michaels here, we talked about him earlier, a newcomer and one to keep an eye on that might be possessing the pace to challenge the likes of Whitmer and Bohm and Peril and Heitkotter at the top of the running order. Really doing a nice job here so far, and he did have some practice earlier, as we saw, so he's got a bit of an advantage over a guy like Heitkotter, who is coming in relatively cold, although Kyle, as we know, that's kind of his custom anyway. He usually shows up pretty late.
Yeah, every single week I think that this isn't going to be a great idea, but every single week he shows me why it doesn't matter that he shows up 10 minutes before the race starts, and here he is. He's down to 28th right now, but about to get rolling. We'll keep you updated here as we get set up for his flying lap, and we'll see if he can put himself inside the top 10 for the race start. So I assume everything's going to run a little bit, again, the schedule is a little bit amended here with the changes that we had, but make sure that you check the chat and enter to win an ASUS Tough Gaming monitor. Actually, this week it's the bezel-free set. The bezel-free kit, so those are really cool inserts you can put between your triple monitors, and it basically tricks you into thinking you don't have any bezels. I've seen it in action. It's really cool, so make sure you enter to win that, as well as a opportunity to win a one-day Skip Barber Racing School. So I think for now, we got about 10 minutes left in qualifying as Carl Whitmer puts himself second best, and we talked about him earlier in the broadcast here, but his pace today has been super impressive.
It has, and this NSX was really fast in the real Liqui Moly Bathurst 12 hours, earlier this year. But Carl has been quick every session I've seen results from. He's been in the top 5, so not a surprise to see him there. And it's just the slimmest of margins separating him from Michaels at the moment. Looks like he's going to have traffic to deal with here, and there's no place to hide if you're the slower car. But unfortunately, that really is costly. I'm not sure if Carl was on a lap fast enough to challenge, but any question of that now is almost certainly out the window. You lose momentum there, and it's going to carry over here onto this massive Conrad Straight and into the chase.
So again, let's address a couple other things that we haven't really talked about yet today. On the left-hand side of the screen, you've got your timing and scoring tower, the white background numbers. Those are your pro drivers, drivers with real-world racing experience. The drivers with the gray backgrounds, those are the champion motorsports drivers who are esports competitors and members of the league that has basically set this up this afternoon. If you see drivers with a red number, there are 2 of them, Robbie Montanola and Andy the Lab, and that is an ASUS representative who's got a YouTube channel that is here this afternoon in the 316 car. Of course, Robbie Montanola, part of GT World Challenge America on the marketing team. He's been doing an excellent job putting so much time and effort in every week to make these broadcasts go off without a hitch, and he's been racing the last couple weeks and had a pretty decent race at Barcelona, and right now trying to get a lap in qualifying, as that was the 39 of Merrill going around at the top of the hill.
And they're old buddies. They're both California guys that kind of grew up racing with each other. Robbie, like you said, is in the marketing department with SRO America, but beyond that, does have a racing background, primarily in single-seaters, and brings that experience to what he does on the organizing side of things with the sanctioning body. But going back to his roots a little bit, driving in the Ferrari here, and he did tell us he went to the Coach Dave Academy, and he picked himself up a setup for this Ferrari, and he feels like he's got the pace to be right on the fringe of the top 10 if he can replicate the best lap of his life. So, that's how racers always are. Well, if only I could have just done the best lap I've ever done, surely we would have had a good result. Unfortunately, it's not always so easy, but I do expect Robbie to have a nice run.
Oh, he'll under the Liqui Moly bridge there on heading into the final corner, Murray's corner. He sets up for a flying lap here. Actually, I believe this is a flying lap. He'll come across the line at 2:03.3 will put him, looks like 18th best behind Guy Cosmo in the Bentleys. We talked about them earlier. And Guy has been one of those drivers that's put in so much time, along with teammate Patrick Byrne. They put in hours and hours and hours. We were joking about Guy before the race and how he's got his sim rig set up above the garage here, but they've been putting in so much time and effort, and Guy's on Instagram has been sharing race recaps as well, so make sure you follow him there to tune in and see the behind the scenes of one of the drivers in this championship.
Yeah, really cool. And Guy, like you said, has put a ton of work into this. Really doesn't need an introduction if you paid attention to North American motorsports, whether it's been in prototypes or GT cars. He's done a lot of racing in Asia in recent years alongside Patrick Byrne. They've been a nice tandem. Guy has been a driver coach for Patrick, who's a younger guy trying to make his way up the ladder a little bit. And while they've done a few starts in SRO Motorsports America paddocks, whether that's in GT3 or GT4 machinery, this year was meant to be the first full-time focus on it, racing for K-Pax Racing in one of these Bentleys. And while they did not have a very good opening weekend at Circuit of the Americas, remember, we actually did get our season started earlier this year at COTA. Unlike so many racing series, we were so fortunate to get a couple of races in before the pandemic caused such a major shutdown. Really was not a great weekend for the K-Pax guys, but the car was still pretty new to them. They're still learning, and when they get up and running, you look at the driver talent of Guy Cosmo and the team behind them, the reigning team's champions in GT World Challenge America, K-Pax Racing. I expect that they're going to be a contender for the Pro-Am title.
So we got about 6 minutes left in qualifying, and the driver at the top of the board right now is Scott Michaels. Well, we are still have a few minutes left. I wanted to talk about this race a little bit. So it's a 60-minute event, the same as all the other GT Rivals events. We've had a couple races that have gone into the darkness. What we have not done yet is drive into the light. And this afternoon, I guess this morning in GT Rivals, we're actually going to be starting at 5 a.m., just like the Bathurst 12-hour, and driving into the light. So that's going to be a really interesting dynamic as you're starting in pitch black, and there's a little bit of artificial lighting on the front straightaway. The rest of the lap is entirely just lit by the headlights on these GT3 cars. So the first lap is going to be very wild. There is a time acceleration this race as well, so we will drive very much into the daylight, but it's going to be fun to watch, and it's going to be absolutely beautiful cresting Skyline.
Well, beautiful for us. Not so sure that's going to be the case in these race cars. The most fraught moments of the race at the start, with everyone bunched together, climbing the mountain into complete and utter darkness. And then when the sun comes out, it's not exactly like it's a panacea, because now you've got the sun shining in your eyes on some pretty crucial parts of this racetrack. So it's going to be a real challenge for these guys when, wow, that was close. And that's going back to what I was talking about earlier, how blind so many of these corners are. You don't know what's waiting on the other side. It could be a car off track. It could be a full stoppage blocking the track that you just go piling into. It's really a challenge, and that's only exponentially more so when you factor in darkness or the glare of the sunrise, as we were talking about a moment ago.
Carl Whitmer goes P1 with a 2-minute .525. Brian Heidkotter fifth in his number 5 Nissan. He goes 2:01.146. Nelson Mason, we talked about him briefly a little while ago in the Audi this week, up into 6th. Colin Mullen in the lone McLaren is 7th best. Then Brennan Oulet in the 333. We've seen him a few times this season. Sits 9th. Shelby Blackstock in 10th. And McMillan and Heidkotter. We talked about these two at Suzuka especially, because McMillan qualified up front, ended up starting from the pits because he missed the grid. But these two have actually shared a race car in the real world before, Ryan.
Yeah, that's right. You got to go back to 2015. They were teammates in another championship I think that would have been before they were using GT4 cars, but something along those lines. And it was, of course, Nissan machinery. Both of these guys, product of the Nissan GT Academy, which has helped launch a number of successful sports car racing careers. Brian Heidkotter being maybe the most notable example from the States, as the North American champion. Went over and raced some in Europe, had several successful seasons racing in the predecessor to GT World Challenge America, Pirelli World Challenge, and just has done a nice job. Although he's been out of a competitive seat for a while, he's been doing driver coaching still in the intervening years, and who knows, maybe everyone watching will recognize what a talent he is and find a way to get him back behind the wheel again. But I think he was the casualty of Nissan scaling back their GT racing commitments from the heights that they were in the late 90s to and into the 2000s. Really just a handful of years ago we saw them scaling back, and there were a few casualties, and unfortunately Brian was one of those.
Checking in on a couple of the drivers we haven't really mentioned yet today. How about Takis Weeks in the 465 car? And he had, I believe, a top 10 run. If you think all the way back to week 2, I believe it was at Misano, where Weeks had a really solid run there. And he's back this week. Right now, 25th in qualifying, but I'm sure he'll get another lap in here before qualifying is over. He's going to run out of time here shortly, though. 2 minutes left to get a lap in, so he'll have really one more shot.
Yeah, that's right. We're talking about a 2-minute lap around this place if you're really flying, so most likely it's going to be considerably longer than that, and he's got traffic up ahead of him to further complicate matters. That's the thing, right? It's more than just putting one lap together yourself. You've got to find a gap. Preferably, you find a gap behind somebody who can give you a nice tow headed down the Conran straight into the chase, and don't have any problems up ahead to slow your momentum down a little bit. So at the moment, he's got a nice gap. This is a clean run so far. Here we go through Skyline and starting that descent down the hill, headed towards the Dipper here in just a little bit. Walls on either side, total rhythm section of this track. Like I said earlier, gratifying when you get it right, but it takes just a half an inch to get it terribly, terribly wrong in a way that's going to ruin your race, and most likely the race of several other people, because there's nowhere to hide around this place up on the mountain.
And this is actually considered technically a street circuit, Ryan. Right. This is for the rest of the year. This is street sorta. I don't think it's as much of a street circuit as you would consider a place like any other street circuit. Take your pick. Long Beach, right? So I mean, this is a little bit different, but at the same time, it's definitely old school in that. If you make a mistake, it will penalize you. There's no runoff here. If you make a mistake, you're going to feel it, and it's going to hurt.
And yeah, so we're not talking about track limits, lap in and lap out here, which I love. There's plenty of drivers who have hit those concrete walls, and maybe they don't love it so much then. But by and large, you talk to the guys who race here, and they love the fact that it punishes you for a mistake. And it really takes some guts and it takes some skill to hang it out and put down a fast lap around this place. It's a huge challenge. And so the guys that can do it typically tend to be the best of the best, and though they want to be judged as such, and this is one of the places they can go to get that judgment. As the clock hits zeros, everyone on a flying lap can continue. We're looking at Colin Mullen, who I think was one of the ones kind of late joining us. 8th right now on the leaderboard, still out there on a flyer. We'll see what he could do as he starts to head his way deck down the mountain in that beautiful McLaren.
He's down 6/10 right now. Nelson Mason is up, but while we're waiting for qualifying to complete, here is a quick look at the timetable of where everyone stands so far. So currently on provisional pole is Carl Whitmer in the number 22 Acura NSX GT3 Evo, and Scott Michaels in second. Bohm, Peril, Heitkotter, the rest of your top 5, Ryan. So a lot of familiar faces up front, but Whitmer been so impressive this week.
Yeah, that is a remarkably fast lap, and you're right, that he has been consistently fast. It seems like the car is well suited to the track, and clearly the driver is up for it too. Bit of a change there at the top was that Bohm that just leaped up into second, pushing Michaels back to third. Nelson Mason, talked about him earlier, switching machinery to the Audi, very similar to the Lamborghini he's been racing, but he's there at 4th. And that next row, if it stands, it'll be row 3 at the start. Heitkotter and Peril. Boy, oh boy, remember the coming together they had at Suzuka.
I bet they
That's
remember
going
it.
to be one to watch. I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. That's going to be one to watch.
There's the rest of your starting lineup, and keeping an eye on drivers like Guy Cosmo and Merrill, who we expect to climb up the order. We're going to jump to break very briefly. We'll be back for the start of the 60-minute race, round number 7 of the 2020 GT Rivals Esports Invitational. We'll be right back.
My mind might not make it out this time. I'm choking on every breath. They tell you that life's not fair. Well, it's not heaven I'm looking for, but I can't take this mess no more. If the water keeps rising high, I won't make it out alive. In over my head, in over my head. Around, scared as hell, I might be till I'm dead. In over my head, in over my head. I can't breathe, can't see. I'm never gonna leave it. This hell that I'm living in over my head.
Mount Panorama has over 20 turns, and you'd never know it. There's no time here to take a breath, to blink, to gather your thoughts, let alone to count the corners. This racing circuit runs up the side of a mountain and back down again. The racing line here is policed by concrete barriers, and mistakes are punished heavily. Today, some of the best in GT World Challenge America go against esports drivers from Champion Motorsports in round number 7 of the 2020 GT Rivals Esports Invitational. My name's Kyle Heyer with Ryan Marine from GT World Challenge America. 60 minutes up the mountain and back down again, over and over and over. Pull those belts tight, hold your breath, and do whatever you have to do to make it around the mountain. Ryan, welcome back to GT World Challenge America's GT Rivals Championship. A bit of a technical issue earlier in the evening. We got sorted out. Now it's about time to go racing, but starting from the darkness. 5 a.m. here local time in Bathurst, Australia, Ryan, as we get ready to go racing up the mountain.
I suspect it was going to be well worth the wait. This track always delivers. It is breathtaking, and maybe never more so than as the sun peeks out above the mountain. But that's going to be a few minutes yet. As you can see, it is pitch black to get this started. Now the sun's going to rise a little faster than it would in the real world, so not sure exactly how long we're going to have under the darkness. Even in the real race mode, we earlier this year, for instance, we saw that it doesn't take too long before the sun comes out, but nevertheless, it's going to be a real challenge while the drivers have to rely on their headlights. You can see right there what a great shot that is about the light coming over the track. It's going to change how the cars handle a great deal. It's going to add to the challenge for sure. And this track needs no extra challenge. There's no doubt about it. With walls lining either side, some of the most technical corners you'll find anywhere, and no runoff room to speak of, and 90% of the track. It is one of the most hallowed grounds in motorsports, and it is revered and feared in equal measure.
Well, here's a look at our track guide again for this afternoon's GT Rivals round number 7. We'll have a look here. Turn number 1, hell corner, hard left-hander, up the mountain straight to Griffin's Bend, into the cutting, uphill. And you're basically, they call it the cutting, right? Because it's carved out of the earth in the mountain here. You're not traveling over the land, you're traveling through it at Mount Panorama.
Yeah, that's right. So that opening stretch there taking you into the climb of the mountain. The cutting is really where that begins, and then it's a twisting, snaking section to when you crest that mountain around the McPhillamy Park area, and from there you start to plunge down the hill. Skyline, what a beautiful corner that is, with a great view over that track, down through a bunch of left-right combinations, eventually to the Dipper, and into that crucial Forest Elbow, because it leads to the longest straightaway on the circuit.
There's a look at Mount Panorama Circuit as we get ready to go racing for 60 minutes this afternoon here on this Memorial Day weekend. So thanks everyone again for joining us here. Thanks to our sponsors for providing us the opportunity to do this today. As we head down to the racetrack, we'll get a look at the nearly 30 drivers that are on the grid here this afternoon. Again, some technical issues that have us on a little bit of a delayed schedule, but you see there the darkness here, and this is going to be a big challenge for these drivers, not necessarily in the complete darkness, but as you crest Skyline into the daylight, that sun rising is going to be in your eyes, and it's already hard enough to see in broad daylight. You see the 90th Kevin Bohm does not yet have his headlights on, and I believe that will be a penalty there. And now he's finally, looked like he flashed him there. Now they're on, which is a good thing because you need to have them on here to avoid a penalty.
That's right, and that's one of the things that's in the driver's hands. Just speaks to the level of immersion that you get in Assetto Corsa Competizione. Beautiful look at this field here and at the challenge that lies in store for these drivers. That visibility is not good, and you're going to have headlights glaring in your virtual rearview mirrors as well to just add to the distraction. And this is on a relatively straightforward part of the track, still some elevation change, but once you get up into the mountain, even this pace lap could prove difficult and dangerous.
So one thing we have to mention is Scott Michaels, who was about to start up inside the top 5. He's all the way back in 30th. He left the server and rejoined it, which meant that he'll be put at the back of the field here. You see the BMW taillights in the darkness there. That's going to be a brutal way to start this night. He was going to be up inside the top 5 and have probably a pretty clean run to start the night. Now he's going to have to follow everybody up and down the mountain for at least the first time through. So Carl Whitmer in the 22 is your pole sitter as they head up the mountain. This is a good time to get your sighting to kind of understand if you have haven't raced this track at night, where all the corners are, because if you don't know this place by feel just yet, you're going to have a really hard time on the opening lap. You have to be able to drive this track with your eyes closed if you want to be able to do it in the darkness, because that's pretty much the level of visibility you're going to have.
That's right. No artificial lighting to speak of, really, through this section. Just a little bit over the fan area there, but it doesn't do much to light the track. I am getting word that we expect Michaels to be able to regain his position. He is apparently allowed to do so, but I'm not quite sure how he's going to be able to do it. It's going to be dangerous, I suspect, trying to weave your way through all of this traffic. So he might be better off just taking a spot there at the back. We'll see what he elects to do. But I think eyes on Whitmer, the pole sitter. It's a different pole sitter here than we've had. And there has been some confusion in previous races when we've had different pole sitters about where to start and where to restart. And it hasn't proven to be that automatic advantage that you expect it to be. In fact, several times, multiple times through previous races, the pole sitter has not led in turn one. So I hope Whitmer's been studying the starts from other drivers so far in the series and can use that to his advantage, because he earned that pole with a tremendous lap and really deserves to have a good shot at leading exiting turn number one. But as we've come to learn, there are no guarantees.
That is certainly the case. So lap number one is where I'm holding my breath, Ryan, as we get prepared for 60 minutes around this more than 20-turn circuit in Bathurst, Australia, the site of the Bathurst 12 Hours, which every year takes GT3 machines up and over the mountain for half a day. And today it's not going to be quite that long. We're going to simulate something similar with a little bit of a time advance this afternoon. So you're going to see the sun rise. It's going to be a little bit quicker than it otherwise would be. But the field, 30 cars strong, streaming their way through the chase and heading to Marie's Quarter. Carl Whitmer in the Acura on the front row alongside CrowdStrike's Kevin Boehm in the number 90 Mercedes. Different platforms, different race cars, different motors, different layouts. Everybody challenging the same racetrack. Today it's not against your competitors, it's against the circuit. 60 minutes of sports car racing, into the darkness, into the light, for GT Rivals round number 7. Field rounds the final corner up onto the front straightaway. Pull your belts tight, gather your breath, because you're going to have to hold it for 60 minutes. Headlights are on. The sun is not up, but it will be shortly. Carl Whitmer on the front row. Green flag flies racing in GT Rivals in 2020 for round number 7 as we scramble down to Hell Corner. Look at this, down into turn number 1. Carl a little bit wide, that's Boehm. Drags some dirt back on the circuit. Behind him, 2 and 3 wide as they all streak through. So far, so good. Carr sideways in the background. Couldn't quite see who that was in all the darkness, but someone has gone around to the exit of Hell Corner.
I think it was a single car incident, which is pretty amazing, all things considered. The battle behind Whitmer, though, is on. That is the battle for second. Contact there. That's Peril trying to find a way around Boehm. That opens the inside, and I believe Nelson Mason has slipped through into P2.
Mason looks like he's gotten through to second. Peril drops back a little bit of contact there as they head through the cutting for the first time. Now up through the hill, Whitmer trying to pull away as quickly as possible. Colin Mullen is back here in that blue McLaren. You can just see him at the back of the shot right behind him. Brian Heidkotter, the lead dominant car of the season, sits in 7th, or at least that's where he started. And maybe be slow and methodical climbing his way forward tonight, because if you try to push it too hard, you're going to be met with a very vicious way to end your day.
Yeah, this is not the place or time to push super hard. Wait till the sun comes up for that. Right now, it's about survival. You can already see the first glimpses of sunlight peeking out just in the distance there. Oh, problems. Somebody running wide there. That looks like an Aston to me.
Yep,
and there's a problem for Mason.
Yeah, Mason slowing down. He might have had a cutting down through Skyline. So it looks like he'll have to drop down a couple positions here as he gives up some time. But McMillan, yeah, big issue for him. He was way wide through the dipper, and that's not a place where you want to go wide there. Behind him at the exit of the corner, there's Brennan Oulet in the 333 Mercedes. JT Tammy is there as well, but the car that has fallen so far back is Mason's number 10 in the Audi. New sponsor on board, the Racers 360 Niagara Motorsport car. Very quickly back to just outside the top 10, 12th, 13th, maybe even 14th. He's got a problem here, maybe some damage on this car.
Possibly, and there is also the possibility of cutting a tire. He does have damage. You can see it on the right side. Problem is the 96 has spun there. That's Scott Hargrove in that Mercedes. Interesting to see him in a Mercedes after so much racing in Porsches. I think I mentioned that on the show last week. But big problems there. He lost a ton of ground. And look at this. Carl Whitmer has just escaped. That's the benefit of starting on pole. He took full advantage of it here.
Behind him, Kevin Boehm in the CrowdStrike car is trying to eat up David Peril here as they head into the mountain straight under the bridge and then towards Griffin's Corner. So the slipstream here are going to be a big deal. almost more important heading down into the chase. See the sparks fly off the 111. What a sight there. But I think the slipstream will be more effective heading down through the chase, but he is right behind Peril. Just no passing opportunities until you really get at the top of the mountain. Then you have really one shot through Skyline, and then you have to wait till the chase to make a move.
Boy, in Skyline, you've really got to be desperate to make a move there. It can be done. Certainly with lap traffic, it can be done. But for position, it's a rare thing, and it's a breathtaking thing when you see it done successfully. Right now, as he makes that little in-car adjustment, I love how that is displayed on the onboards here in ACC. The driver reaching over to make that change there. But right now, this is largely going to be a single-file part of the track. It's about positioning yourself for a good run onto the Conrad straight and being able to make that pass in the chase. As we drop back here, it looks like perhaps problems for Cullen Mullen. He's dropped back considerably. He was on the fringe of the top 5 just a little bit ago, and now finds himself mired in traffic behind Patrick Byrne, who appears to have had a very nice start.
Yeah, Patrick Byrne up to 11th, and this is very crowded right now. It's Byrne, Waddell in the number 99. He's going to go wide at the exit of Forest Elbow. He's going to hit the concrete, and through goes Mullen. That'll be for 11th spot. That was a wild slide there, and you see Scott Michaels back here. He's up to 13th place in that BMW, working by that 99 car. So again, he was supposed to start up towards the front, ended up at the rear, but ended up sort of finding his way somewhere into the middle of the group as they run side by side towards the chase. That's going to get really dicey. Mullen on the inside. That's the 9 of Patrick Byrne on the outside. They'll get single file out. No, they won't. Contact there as Byrne goes through the grass.
Yeah, they should have got single file. That's really a tough place to do what they just did. And I'll tell you what, Michaels has played that to perfection. Well, spoke a bit too soon. That's a bit more argy-bargy, as my colleague Calvin Fish would say. Ordinarily, he got into the door of Mullen there and kind of knocked him offline. But I do think he was up alongside enough, and both were able to continue on. I don't anticipate any kind of penalty there, but not a great run out of Hell Corner. And that might open up the opportunity for Mullen to counterattack.
He's going to have a look on drivers left as they head up the hill. Now it's BMW versus McLaren Power into Griffin Bend, and nose to tail, you see the green LED strip. That is Michael's car as they head into turn number 2 and climb the mountain once again. So far, we've had a handful of laps. We haven't seen any major incidents, at least not towards the front yet. Nelson Mason, though, we documented his slow start. There must be damage on that car from a drop all the way back to 27th, Ryan. That is just a disastrous start for him.
I do think one of our shots did show some damage to that car, and that's a real shame. He had great pace and has been a consistent front runner, but was really in rarefied air here. One of just a handful that I think were showing the kind of consistent pace to be able to contend for a win without some serious misfortune to some of the contenders up at the front. So he'll have to gather it back in. Maybe he's had some repairs. It's a little bit unclear. He's got some guys to go and chase right here, but he's surrounded by several people who have not had the start to this race that they were hoping for.
That's Ernest De La Cruz in 13th in the number 296, and then right in front, I believe that's Patrick Byrne, or that could also be, that's Guy Cosmo, Guy Cosmo in the 8 car. So as they exit Forest Elbow and head down towards the chase, a bit of a slipstream there, so Mason will pop out of line. Porsche versus Audi now. 2 German giants. High-speed section here, well over 270 kph as we saw in practice earlier today. Whoa, big slide. Mason gonna slide wildly into the chase. Is he gonna have contact again? Yes, and Ernest De La Cruz gets clobbered and slides off course. Another car behind him off track as well, and a big incident. That's a huge impact for the 296.
Oh, that really is unfortunate for Ernest there. He was a victim, absolutely nothing he could have done. He avoided it a couple of times, and then the sliding car, almost as if magnetized, went right into his door. That's a really unfortunate break there for Ernest, part of the CMS Racing Group.
Now we're going to take a look at it here in just a moment. Ernest De La Cruz in the 296. As we maybe we'll look from up above here, you see him, he had just had a side-by-side contact. He thinks he's clear, and then the 10 car sweeps back across the track and punts the 296 off course. Was able to get out of the gravel trap. That's actually pretty tricky to do if you get yourself stuck in there, but De La Cruz certainly involved in a fairly major incident there. Looks like the car will be drivable, but certainly not going to help that he had that damage.
Well, you lose a ton of time. There is potentially some damage. There ought to be some damage given contact of that magnitude. And yeah, I think his hopes for a great finish are probably out the window at this point. As we jump ahead here and look at Kevin Bohm, who's running in the 3rd spot. Peril's been able to check out a little bit and now running solidly in 2nd. He's setting sail, trying to find a way to track down our race leader, Whitmer, who had built up up a lead of 4.5 seconds. Unbelievable. Also worth noting, Brian Heitkotter has recovered. He fell back to 7th on the start. He's up to 5th now and appears to be putting some pressure on McMillan, his erstwhile teammate, if we go back a couple of years like we talked about in a racing series back in 2015. So these two know each other quite well.
And actually the race leader, Carl Whitmer, was about to put Guy Cosmo one lap down, so he has had an issue and is currently running in 25th, so not the start that he wanted in this race. As we'll look around a little bit. How about Kevin Anderson's 44? He's got, looks like, is that Dela Cruz behind him? Yes, it is. So trying to recover from his incident a lap ago with the 10 car. He's going to look to driver's left. This is the same issue that got him into contact a lap ago. He's going to go on the outside as they head through the very fast kink on the back straightaway, and this time looks like it will work slightly better as they break into the chase.
Now, it takes some mutual respect to get through there, and both displayed it very nicely. Good move there by Dela Cruz, just able to hold that inside, and I think that forced Anderson off wide. I shouldn't say it forced him, but he was trying to leave some room there, and it looked like the car might have slipped out from under him, and he dropped a wheel, and that made it an easy pass to complete.
Here's Brennan Oulé in the 333 in 7th, and right behind him, JT Tammy in the low Lexus sideways for the 333. He'll contact the barrier at the inside of Griffin Corner. That's a bad place to have an incident, but he'll get recollected. That was about probably the best spot on this track you could have an incident because that corner's pretty slow.
Well, that's true. So hopefully the damage wasn't too significant, but that's really disappointing and unfortunate for Brandon, who has been one of the faster guys out of the CMS stable. He's running the top 10 regularly. I think he was a pole sitter at one point earlier in the season as well. Here's JT Tammy, one of his Champion Motorsports teammates in that Lexus. You could already see the sun coming up, car off wide just up ahead, that Shelby Blackstock at the NSX. And so he had a whole head of steam built up, did Tammy, but nowhere to go with it in this section. Even if you're way faster than the car ahead of you, there's just no place to make a pass here coming down the hill unless you're really opportunistic or the guy in front opens the door and really helps you through.
Well, enjoy your visibility right now with the headlights, because in a lap or two we're going to have the sun peeking over the mountains in the background, which is going to make it a whole lot harder to see. Drive through for Patrick Byrne in the number 9 Bentley, and not sure what that is for, but it looks like he'll have to come in and serve that. Meanwhile, we'll jump back up front to Carl Whitmer. He leads the way. You see Peril in the background in the 111, but Kevin Boehm and Nick McMillan 3rd, 4th, and Brian Heitkotter is in 5th. And Heitkotter, again, didn't have the dominant race that we would have expected last week at Barcelona, but still ended up coming out on top there. He's been so impressive at just staying in there. Even races where I don't think he has the fastest car, he just still ends up looking like he's the best man for the job out there.
No question about it, and I think, as we've talked about previously, it comes back to his sim racing background. He is so good at being consistently fast. There's plenty of guys in this field that can turn in a fast lap, but to do it lap after lap right on the limit and feeling that limit in the sim, especially coming from a real-world racing background, that's where the challenge lies, and Brian is so good at both. And right now we can see him running down McMillan. It looks like McMillan's turning in some good times. He himself might be running down Boehm, and interesting to note that Peril really had chopped into that margin. It was down to 3 seconds, but I think he caught some lap traffic because it's back up to 8 seconds now between 1st and 2nd, and that's some of the give and take we're going to see, especially in the mountain portion of this track. You catch lap traffic at the wrong time, and it's like dropping an anchor behind a car. It's nothing you can do to make up the speed disparity that you're going to have to the guy you're chasing. Yeah,
and Carl Whitmer's last lap was a 2:03.6, and that was very much off the pace, about a second and a half slower than his previous lap. So definitely caught some traffic. You see Boehm right now, he's following some lap traffic down the hill. That looks to be Guy Cosmo in the number 8 car. So they head onto the back straightaway here at the exit of Forest Elbow, trying to track him down. In that is 23rd place. It looks to be, yes, it is Guy Cosmo's number 8. So sandwiched himself between Peril, who is the lead car in that shot, and the 3rd place, CrowdStrike number 90.
Interesting to keep an eye on this, how these guys deal with the lap traffic. It's part of the give and take, like we said. Looks like Peril's back on it, which is good to see. So 4 seconds, it looks like, back behind Whitmer. Looks like I had a little glitch on my timing screen that made me think he was further behind than he was. So good news for Peril fans, still very much in striking distance. And here's Boehm, and he definitely has a whole lot of company behind him, with McMillan and Heitkotter both anxious to make a move. They want to challenge for a podium for sure.
Love this helmet cam on the CrowdStrike number 90 of Kevin Bohm. We had this on board Colin Mullen's car last week, and so here is the 90, and you see Peril up the road just by about 2 or 3 seconds as they head onto the mountain straight. And deeper in the field, though, Ernest De La Cruz, we documented his issue is behind him. Jacob Rude and Kevin Anderson had a bit of an argy-bargy moment through the chase. But we documented the 296's problems. He's back up in 13th place, so all that drama, and he's still having a pretty solid day, even with the issue he had down into the chase a few laps ago.
Pretty remarkable, all things considered. I saw that contact and thought there might be some damage there that would require a lengthy stop, but it looks like he got out of that without too much trouble and seems to be progressing up through the field, which is great to see for him. He's got James Pesic up ahead. It's quite a bit of work he's going to have to do to get there, but he's got some good pace and plenty of experience as well, one of the sim racers in the field.
And here's Robbie Montanola in 19th place. Again, SRO America's marketing manager, who has been doing such a great deal of work behind the scenes to make sure that these go off without a hitch. He was the one that was scrambling to try to get everything together. He did a great job this afternoon.
Everyone else was practicing.
Yes.
He was trying to get the problem fixed, so that definitely went to his detriment, but great to see that he's back up and running here, putting in some good lap times, and certainly clawing in on Patrick Byrne up ahead. He's just moved up into the 18th spot after some problems for Merrill, it looks like, who's in pit lane at the moment, according to timing and scoring. So Montanola, I think he's got an eye on a top 15 finish. If he can get that, he'd be quite pleased with it. And here is Merrill, unfortunately in pit lane. Not quite sure what led to that.
Yeah, a lot of damage on that car, and it's not looking like he'll get that car back rolling again. So in the background, you see Kevin Bohm in third, followed by Nick McMillan in the number 3 car, then a height Connor. So 3, 4, 5 all still pretty tight together as Carl Whitmer just continues to put in pretty solid laps at 2:02.355 last time through. But the sun is rising, and that, again, the visibility issues that we're going to experience here at the crest of Skyline, not anything to laugh at. We've already seen quite a bit of lap traffic here, Ryan, and again, every corner you round at Mount Panorama is another surprise if you have a lap car there, especially if someone's had an incident, which is so possible. You come around a corner, there's a car dead stick in the road, it's going to be a bad day.
Now, we've seen it so many times in the real world. You come around a corner and have no idea there's 3 or 4 cars just stacked up, blocking the entire width of the track. It's just the nature of racing here at Bathurst, and again, the challenge of it is so relished, but the danger of it is very real and very appreciated as well. Thankfully, don't have to worry too much about that in the physical sense here with the sim, but nevertheless, the danger of having your race ruined is very real. Peril, actually, Whitmer that we're riding on, you can see he is on it, cresting the top of the hill. Here's Skyline on the brakes with a lot of depression, and as you go down the hill, just bouncing back and forth between the left and the right, not getting up too much on the curbs because those can send you shooting into the walls. Here we go through the Dipper, just a classic corner here and into Forest Elbow, leading out onto the Conrad Straight. What a breathtaking circuit.
The funny thing about the curbs at a place like Bathurst is the Aussies have a different idea of what curbs should be. They got their V8 supercars that like to jump those things. It's pretty much a whole different altitude on those things, especially down through the chase. Those are nasty, and you really don't want to be up on top of those, especially in a low-slung GT3 car. So you're going to watch Carl Whitmer kind of keep his distance from the apex curbs here, and maybe just touch the exit curbs slightly, almost. But again, they're on a whole different level. It's like you got to prepare for takeoff every time you line up to hit one of those things.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. The curbing really is there to dissuade as best as they can the behemoths that are the Australian V8 supercars from getting up and abusing the track limits too much. And it's a different level of highly sprung GT3 machinery that we're talking about here that really can't get up on a lot of these curbs. Some of them are friendly, others are very steep, like you mentioned. And I kind of go back to maybe some of the changes that went in at Road America when stock cars started racing there once again in recent years, and those changes made it difficult for some of the sports cars to use curbing or parts of the track that they used to use, and I think it's a similar situation here.
Drive-through penalty for Scott Hargrove in the 96, so he'll have to come down and serve that. Riding aboard with Shelby Blackstock up the mountain straight. You see Ulay behind him. Scott Michaels making a pass on the 333 as they head into Griffin Corner, and right behind him there's JT Tammy in the Lexus. So pass for position, move Michaels up to 6th place as Tammy tracks them all down.
And that's not a surprise. He had the pace. He was scheduled to start towards the front, had a disconnect issue and rejoined, and I think was trying to get back some of the starting spots. I'm not sure exactly how far he got, but he had a lot of ground to make up when he finally reconnected on the pace lap. And while he was allowed to regain his position by the rules, he clearly wasn't able to get all the way up to it. So it's been a recovery drive ever since. And pretty amazing what he's been able to do, not just to put in the fast laps and make all the passes, but to do it cleanly. And he's been in the middle of some pretty scary moments, quite frankly, earlier in this race, and seems to have been able to pick the right way to get through them to this point without getting any damage that I can see on that race car.
Yeah, looks good so far as climbs up and sets its sights on 5th place Shelby Blackstock, who's having a really solid day. The Acuras in general, Carl Whitmer and Shelby Blackstock, both top 5. Of course, they're missing teammate Tom O'Gorman this afternoon, but these two are having a good day. Kyle Marcelli, we haven't really talked about him yet today. He's back in 28th, and I wonder, and he's no longer the server, I wonder if that was the car that we saw spun around on the opening lap down in Hell Corner. That could have been Marcelli in the 80, but either way, Marcelli's dead last right now, having a pretty tough day. But looks like Blackstock and Whitmer still maintain a top 5 running order.
Still plenty to be optimistic about from that Honda camp. Blackstock, who we're looking at here in 5th. Whitmer, of course, leading this race. That lead has shrunk by just a couple tenths of a second, it appears, in recent laps, but still pretty solid at this point, but still a long way to go. We're just not even 20 minutes in, so more than 2/3 of the race remaining, and I think this battle right here is going to be the one to keep an eye on. This train is fascinating for a lot of reasons, but Michael's putting some pressure on Blackstock. I think he's got the pace. It's just a matter of getting there and making sure you get there at the right time so that you can actually make a pass, because as we've discussed, so many portions of this track, you just have to take single file. There's just no other way around it.
So another interesting aspect about Bathurst 12 Hour, at least this year, was the kangaroo interaction that they had there. I was watching some YouTube clips of that earlier today, Ryan, and that was due to all the intense drought that they were experiencing that pushed some of the wildlife a little closer to the circuit than years past. But we don't have that in the sim, and as much as I wish we did, it's probably better that we don't as we head down the hill here with 40 minutes to go.
Yeah, it is a real part of racing at Bathurst, though. It's not uncommon at least once every race weekend for the Bathurst 12 Hour or the 1000 Bathurst 1000 to have a yellow or a red flag for wildlife on track, and that usually means a joey, a kangaroo on the racetrack. So we saw the pressure, I think, getting to Blackstock just a little bit. Michael's there forcing him wide, perhaps just driving in his mirror a little bit, and dropped a wheel off. We saw that a moment ago. Not sure it's going to open up the opportunity to make a pass. Here we go, really high-speed part of the track. He takes a look to the inside, but looks like Shelby's able to hold on for now. He's going to have his hands full, though, to keep Michaels behind him for any length of time. That BMW looks hooked up, and we did get confirmation that he did start dead last.
That's
so
amazing.
From dead last to 6th around this place in just 20 minutes. That's the drive of the day as far as I'm concerned.
That's unbelievable. I mean, I thought, I think at the end of lap 2, he was in 15th or 16th or something like that. That alone would have been an amazing climb, but I didn't know that he was all the way back in about 28th or 29th when the race started. Very impressive drive so far. We do have to check in on our race leader, though, because Carl Whitmer has been running some pretty solid laps, but last time through was about a second off pace, and Peril jumped on that. But that gap has sort of stayed constant. It fluctuates here and there, but the 22 Acura still leading the race, as he has from the drop of the green flag.
And I think at the back of a previous shot, I might have seen a lapped car. And if that was indeed the case, I suspect that might have caused him to lose some time. And then Peril's going to have to deal with that. It looks like Peril has moved through. There was a BMW there that I think is not quite on the leader's pace that they were dealing with earlier. Interesting, I see on the timing screen, Colin Mullen has picked up a drive-through penalty. He was running an 8th, and that's going to really be a major setback for him.
It seems like every week, and now that Kenton Cook isn't here, he's been avoiding the penalties, but Colin Mullen has seemed like he's picked him up. And I think, remember last week, I don't remember if he was the receiving end of it or the giving end of it, as we see a car slow. Was that Blackstock who was just slowed down and let a couple cars by? Well, I don't know if there was an incident there, so let's go back and take a look and see if we can find out what led Blackstock to slow down and give up that time. Whether or not there was an issue on the racetrack. Here's a look. pressing the hill. It's so easy to just nick the wall through McPhillamy Park. Maybe runs wide. Oh, right there, big slide. Wow. And look at what Scott Michaels did to get around that. And look at the 333 expertly moving his way around. That was phenomenal race car driving there by everybody involved. And it's not often that you crash through McPhillamy Park and not hit something. That was amazing.
That is absolutely stunning. Some heart in your throat moments there for several drivers. Shelby Blackstock probably most of all, but that was some real driving by Ulay to be able to navigate his way through there, and looked like he had to go off track a little bit and then into that really remarkable downhill elevation change at Skyline right afterwards. So a really remarkable job by him. And then Michaels, we've seen him in the thick of some of the craziest parts of this race, and he seems to always pick the best way through, and he finds himself from dead last to the top 5. Now he's got a ton of work to do if he's going to run down Whitmer for the win, but I don't know if a podium's out of the question.
I don't think it is. We're hearing that Mullen had contact in the chase with another driver. That was what led to his drive-through, so just car contact. Again, the stewards hard at work right now as Mullen is going to let on by a couple cars. He's fighting pretty hard here. That is Ernest De La Cruz, I believe, in the 296 car, who I don't believe is on the lead lap. So, yes, he's a lap down from the race leader. So, no pass for position. You see the blue flags flying there from the marshals in the flag stands. Up in front, Whitmer again has re-extended his lead out to about 4 seconds over Peril. And it looks like, I mean, this is, we've seen this quite a bit where the leader gets a bit of a lead, but we can never guarantee how things are going to pan out with penalties and with lap traffic, especially at a track like this.
Well, we should go back to a conversation that we had back during qualifying and the practice, in fact, even before qualifying, about the season that Carl Whitmer is putting together in GT Rivals. And again, credit to Patrick Whitmer for sending me this information. He worked up the stats and the point standings as if we were paying points the way we do for GT World Challenge America, Pirelli GT4 America, and TC America. And Carl would be second in points, albeit 80 points in arrears of Brian Heitkotter. But those two are the only drivers that to this point have finished in the top 10 in every single race. No one else has done it. And so it's not a surprise to see Whitmer on the pace. He's been very fast. The surprise, perhaps, is that he's having this kind of outright pace. He's not challenged for a race win that I can recall, at least in recent weeks, but he's definitely established himself as the favorite going back to some of the practices and what we've seen so far here in this race as well.
Penalty for Scott Michaels to drive through it, and we've been following his progress so far, and I have not seen him have contact, and that car looks pretty clear of any sort of damage. I'm not exactly sure that what that's for, so we're gonna have to keep you updated on that situation as we'll ride on board Carl Whitmer's car as he heads through the top of the hill. But that's a big deal for Michaels if he picks up a drive-through. Didn't see what that was for. Look at the sun. How beautiful is this in Assetto Corsa Competizione?
It's beautiful for us, as we've said before, maybe not so much for Carl driving, because that is a difficult glare to deal with, and this is not the part of the track that you want to be dealing with any kind of loss of visibility. But to your point, it is amazing how accurately modeled these tracks are in ACC. It looks like you're there. In fact, I've had several people come up to me or send me text messages or what have you about watching these streams and saying they have to remind themselves that it's not real, which I think is a real testament to what the Kunos folks have done.
And I think this is probably the most visually appealing simulator on the market right now, at least with GT3 cars in it. So if you're looking for the best way to simulate an experience in a GT3 car, this is the platform for you, as they see Michael's round Forest elbow. So we're not seeing anything, any sort of manual penalty, so maybe track limits violation, but Ryan, if you get a track limits violation here, your car would not look like this.
Yeah, that's a weird one. There's a few places you can go over some curbing, and there is a little bit of room, but not much. So, yeah, this one's
you know
what
this is?
To me.
This is from the contact earlier in the race. This was when we saw him roughing up Mullen in the final corner. That's what that's from. Just heard the update from Finney and Nakuna behind the scenes. But we saw that live earlier in the race where they came out of the final corner and they kind of got hooked together, a little bit of argy-bargy, as you mentioned. And I was surprised to see a penalty for that. You mentioned earlier we wouldn't think we would see one, but there has been. So for Scott Michaels, that's a bad way to get this race going after having such a strong start.
Yeah, that's a shame. I'll say this. The stewards have access to a lot of replays and angles and things like that we only got to see it the one time, and there might have been something more to it than what I saw. So I will certainly defer to them on any decisions that are made. It's a difficult job, and I'd like to point out once again, we do have real-life stewards helping us to adjudicate these races. That was one of the reasons we had the delay. So for those of you who have stuck around, thank you, because we were delayed in getting started, and the server issues that were being experienced really across the board with ACC, really outside of anybody's control, but they were prohibiting our stewards from getting logged in. So couldn't go racing without them. Big thanks to them for what they do. I'm sure Michaels won't be very happy about this penalty, and I'm sad to see it on a personal level because it undoes what has been the most interesting story of the day to me, starting dead last and running his way all the way up to 5th.
Yeah, so really unfortunate penalty for the 134. Will have to come down, and again, new driver this week. It's his first run in the series, and I think he found out that, a little bit of trading pay. This isn't NASCAR, and you're going to get yourself penalized for it, so that's unfortunate for him, but sometimes you got to learn the hard way. As you see Kevin Boehm navigating through the chase, the orange glow from the rising sun here in Bathurst, Australia, glinting off the CrowdStrike colors into the final corner here. Updates on a couple other drivers we haven't talked about in a little while. Robbie Montanola, wow, look at the sun there as he comes through turn number 1, hell corner. And he's up to 15th right now, so a really good run for him.
Yeah, doing a great job as usual. Like we said earlier, he's been hard at work behind the scenes to make this happen, and missed out on a lot of practice time because he was the one who was greasing the levers to do anything possible to make sure this race ran today when we encountered some of those technical issues. So look at that, a top 15 run. I think he'll be very happy with that. So much about this track is survival, and Robbie certainly knows that. And maybe you're not going to win if you go into a pure survival mode, but you can get a very good result, especially in a sprint race like this. And when people are inclined to be aggressive with not a ton of time to work with. And so I think Robbie's taken that in mind. He's done a nice job of finding himself in a rhythm. Like we said earlier, he got his setup from the setup store, so to speak, from the Coach Dave Academy, and he's putting it to good use.
Here's a battle between John Miller in the 38 and James Pesic in the number 40 Aston Martin as they streak down the front straightaway into the first corner. And that is Porsche versus Aston Martin for 9th position right now.
Cool stories both. Miller kind of snuck onto the podium last week. It was a bit of a surprise. I think there were some disconnects late in the race and some penalties that were served and various other misfortune, but he had a good top 10 run going regardless. Under pressure here as Pesic takes a peek to the inside. Last of the late breakers there, but can't get it done quite in time, and now is going to have to be patient as they climb the hill. There's not many places to make a pass here for several corners yet, but I thought Miller's run last week was one worth noting. And then Pesic, this is the best result, I think, if he's in line to finish here, that he's had so far. Races a GT4 Mustang usually, and probably GT4 America for his family-run PF Racing team, usually in conjunction with Jade Buford, who's a really good pro himself, who's been instrumental in helping that team get up to speed, but doing a nice job here in this pink Aston, which he's been running for most of the championship, if not all.
So we're hearing also that the contact earlier that Colin Mullen was penalized was the same contact that penalized Michael. So those two both getting the hammer there from the stewards, pretty much telling them both to knock it off, and it looks like that both will have served that penalty. Mullen is in 8th place right now as scored. You jump back up to 3rd place, Kevin Boehm in this number 90 as he crests the Griffin's Bend area, chasing peril still. About a couple seconds back from that number 111 Ferrari, but podium is pretty much sorted as it stands. You see Brian Heitkotter is a couple seconds back here. So we've really got to spread out front 4 or 5 here, but that by no means means that we're done fighting up at the front yet today.
Certainly not, and we'll touch on that in just a second, but I did want to follow up on the Michael situation. He came in to serve his penalty, but missed his pit box, crossed the start-finish line, and remember, you only have a certain amount of laps to serve that penalty, and he had pushed it to the very edge. By crossing start-finish line before serving that penalty, he was DQ'd. So one of the fastest cars in this race, out of the race, just a simple little mistake like that, and it's all over.
That is absolutely brutal for Scott Michaels. Had such a good night going, and that just shows you how quickly things can go wrong here as Peril closes in on a lap car. I believe that is, that looks to be 23rd place Guy Cosmo, who has not really had the start of the race that he would want to, but I cannot get over how beautiful this is, Ryan. Absolutely gorgeous. This is one of those racetracks, just like Spa-Francorchamps that we ran a few weeks ago. This is one of those like bucket list racetracks that everybody feels like they have to go to at some point in their life, and I want this on my on a ticket here at some point, and as soon as I can afford it, I'm going.
It's right on the top of my list as well. There's no doubt about it. Just absolutely gorgeous. We talked about Guy Cosmo a moment ago. A shame not to see the Bentley featuring at the front because they had such a good race in the Wuchmali Bathurst 12-hour earlier in the year. But this run from Peril, no surprise, and it does look like he's been able to slowly chip away at that advantage. 3.2 seconds last I saw for Peril as he tries to close in on Whitmer. And man, I hope he gets there. It'll be a fun battle between those two very similar cars in a lot of respects, the Ferrari and the NSX. And don't count out this guy, Kevin Boehm, lurking. He's about the same distance behind Peril as Peril is behind Whitmer. And Boehm has been consistently fast since he started with us here in GT Rivals. He's going to have to find a way past Cosmo, and we'll see. Maybe Guy Cosmo finds a way to pull out of the way, but there's not a great place to do that here in this part of the racetrack.
No, really, there's a lot of racetracks, and you can even think of tracks like Lime Rock Park. They're not very similar, and I'll let you see the 90 just catch the wall there. They're not that similar, but what there are similarities, you spend most of the lap setting up for really one passing opportunity. As you see, Guy Cosmo's going to pull over, make that easy, but really the best place to make a pass here is into the chase or into Hell Corner, and the rest of the lap is just running single file and just setting up to make that move. So really not a great opportunity through the S's, but the lap traffic help facilitates that. As we jump back, there's Jacob Ruud, and that is the 99 car, I believe, that is not on the same lap as it stands. There was also a battle between Pesic and John Miller. Those two have continued their battle. As you see now, Pesic has a spot over Miller, but Miller is going to go to driver's left. Lap traffic ahead of him, though, that is not for position, so they're going to have to get by. Actually, is that? Nope, it's not. I thought it looks to be the other BMW. That's not Ruud. It is
Grahovic, I believe.
Yes, that is correct.
Oh, look at this. Miller taking a look to the inside there in the cutting. You don't see a lot of passes there. It's not complete yet. They're going to have to cooperate, and they do. Wow, this has been a thrilling battle for the last couple of laps, and that takes the cake. Awesome driving, great respect between these two.
See the sparks flying off the diffuser of the lead car. That's John Miller's 38. Now through Skyline, the sun in the eyes of the drivers, lap traffic in front of them. How do they negotiate this? Pesic has to know that he's going to get slowed up here by this 38 and by the lap traffic in front of him. So now down the hill, you see Grahovic holding up the 38 just slightly. Now they're all stacked up. Grahovic spins. Pesic gets on by another lap car. Back to the left. Here they come down the hill. A really dicey moment as the 26 car spins at the top of the hill.
Now that McLaren was really off the pace, and I think it caught everyone out. Oh boy, we got...
That looks to be... Is that the 44 of Kevin Anderson? Yes, it is. So he was involved in a collision there with the rejoining 26.
Wow. Yeah, that was really unfortunate because that group caught a very slow car, and I don't believe that was Miller's fault. Miller got into the back of Grahovic, true, but I don't think he expected Grahovic to slow as much as he did, and that was preempted by the off-the-pace car just up the road, and that stacked everybody up. If it was me in the stewarding box based on what I saw, I would say that's just kind of a racing situation, and it sorted itself out. Maybe not super fair for everybody involved, but about as well as they're going to be able to do, and it lets this battle resume here between Pesic and that pink car and then the Porsche of Miller.
Great battles here. They've had a fairly clean fight as well. We haven't really seen a lot of contact. There is a bit of a scuff on the back of that Porsche, and it could be from the front of the number 40 of Pesic, but not quite sure if that's the case. So I don't really see the puzzle pieces necessarily fitting there perfectly, but they continue to battle for 9th, and right behind them, I believe, that is the 21st place car of Alec Udell. Haven't really seen a whole lot of him today as Pesic. It seems like this Asset is so strong going up the hill. Look at him challenging Miller as they head through Griffin Bend.
That's right. Had the lead in this battle at this point last time, but just left that door cracked open a little bit. Miller makes sure that he doesn't do the same and repay the favor to Pesek. Didn't give a full car width to the inside, and it looked like that was not the best corner there for Pesek. He lost a lot of momentum. Looked like he had to back out a little bit coming up the hill.
Also here, there's a battle for 25th, and if I can try to find it, I don't really know exactly. There's 316, an invitational driver here today. Not exactly sure where that fight was, but I was hearing that there was one. There's Tonkus Weeks in the 465 and Ernest De La Cruz. Again, we documented the spin earlier today after contact with the 10 of Nelson Mason, but De La Cruz has covered okay, but since then hasn't really gone much farther than 15th or 16th spot.
Yeah, it was up higher than that for a time, and then all of a sudden found himself further back, and it's a little unclear to me what exactly caused that, but it's been an up and down day, as I say, for Ernest De La Cruz, who works his way to the inside there, but can't get that pass complete.
Well, the Nissan is a strong car. We've seen Brian Heitkotter take it to victories week in and week out. Weeks joining us again after his other round this season at Misano. Had a really strong run there, but holding off the Porsche GT3R of the 296. And again, Bathurst is one of these places where you find a lot of the differences between the cars. We spoke earlier how equal the BOP is and how equal the cars are, but there are still some slight advantages to one car versus the other. The Nissan's still a pretty strong car. Let's go back up momentarily to the battle between Miller and Pesek as they come out of Murray's corner onto the front straightaway. 21 minutes to go, and this battle is still far from over.
Oh my goodness, this has been great. They've swapped this spot a couple of times on camera. I suspect it's been swapped a few other times, and you could tell they're both wringing the necks of their respective cars. Pesek very wide there on corner exit. That is one place I do wonder if track limits might come into play. But still got a pretty good run in that slipstream, and this is where he's been strong, able to close back up on that Porsche, but getting around is going to be the challenge. Not a lot of room to make that maneuver here, and it doesn't help that he's got a lap car filling his beers. Alec Udell, I noticed on the opening lap, had dropped back quite a ways. I'm not quite sure what caused that, but he appears to have a great deal of pace, but stuck behind this battle for position, which is not a great place to be.
Kevin Bohm is still in third place. There's Heitkotter in the background up to fourth place. Again, everybody shuffling up a spot after the penalty for Michaels earlier in this race and the ultimate DQ after missing the pit road entry. I've been noticing Pesek has been closing on the mountain straight, and then down the hill it seems like the Porsche is a little bit more nimble through here. And this is where Pesek loses some time, but it's really the braking zone at the end of the mountain straight where Pesek has been pretty much closing all of that gap, but then he loses some at the rest of the top of the hill.
Well, this is where you want to be strong, because if you can get a good clean run here, then build a gap that is big enough that the car behind can't just slipstream by you, then you're probably going to be safe for the better part of a lap. We'll see if that holds true here as we drop back to this fight with Tonkus Weeks once again working with Ernest De La Cruz.
They were side by side now. We pulled away for a moment, but I didn't think they were going to have this battle, but now they will. Pesek to drivers right into the chase. Miller defends up and over the curb. A little bit awkward there. Oh, he turns him sideways as the 38. Out of control. He'll spin, get back rolling again, but Pesek goes on through. A push and a shove for 9th place. And Miller has picked up a drive-through, and I imagine we might see one for Pesek as well as Miller hits pit lane.
That's too bad for Miller, and I suspect you're right. That contact looked to me like it was avoidable. There were a couple of bumps, at least it appeared, from Pesek to Miller, and Miller certainly was the victim in that circumstance. As we take a look back at it here, this is a tough place to run side by side. They did a good job sorting it out. Miller came back across the track, as is his right to defend, and really just got moved out of the way from there.
Now we're hearing the penalty for Miller was actually contact with Grahovic, so that penalty was not related to that contact. That obviously would have been a very quick draw by the stewards to get that one, but Miller will hit pit lane here. You actually saw him miss the apex to the pit road entry there. That's a complicated pit entry, but Miller got it slowed down and into the pit box. So checking in on Pesek, he's now in 9th, but I imagine we'll see a penalty or a drive-through for that contact as well.
so that contact with Grahovic, that was that situation where they were coming down the mountain and they caught that invitational McLaren that was really, really slow, and it caused Toby to check up, and John got into the back of him. And the way I read it was John didn't really have anywhere to go. I think he was surprised to see Toby slow down as much as he did and where, but obviously the steward saw something else, and so that leads to a penalty for John and knocks him out of the top 10. And I do suspect you're right. We have word that this incident that we saw a moment ago on the last lap is under review, and Essek, as good of a run as he's been having inside the top 10 here, I think on pace for the best result he's had so far in GT Rivals, but I suspect that's going to go out the window.
Weeks and Dela Cruz, this is for 15th and 16th. These two have been trading blows back and forth. You mentioned earlier that they probably had a bunch of off-camera position changes. They've been 15th and 16th for a little while now. But Dela Cruz trying to use that Porsche, how nimble it is up the hill, and a little bit of a miss apex there on the right-hander. Yeah, that corner is actually pretty important because you actually carry quite a bit of speed up the mountain here into the cutting. And it's really right here, the hard left-hander, that you kind of kill off the rest of your momentum before using these big motors to power your way up to the top of the mountain.
Definitely so. It's just fun watching the ebb and flow between these two cars. We talked about it earlier, and how equal in terms of ultimate lap time all of these cars are, but they do it in different ways. Some cars are going to be fast down the long straight but give up time in the corners, and it can be the opposite for others, and there's varying degrees of both circumstances. So it's one of the fun things about GT racing is the pressure is being piled on here, and these are a couple of guys who know each other well. They race together in that same league, the Champion Motorsports League, and that should add to the fun here because there's some bragging rights on the line. They get to be in the big show here and also represent their club.
Penalty drive-through for James Pesix, number 40, Aston Martin. No surprises there, really. Kind of expected to see that after the contact, but stewards have deemed that one a little naughty, and he'll have to come down and serve a drive-through penalty in the pit lane.
I have to agree with that assessment based on the replay that we saw. I think that is the right call. It's a tough place to be running close together, but it's still incumbent on these guys to treat each other fairly, and I think that one did overstep the lines just a little bit.
Checking back up with our race leader, Carl Whitmer. You see the sparks flying there, and he has not misstepped this entire race. Leads by 3 seconds over Peril. That's been a pretty constant gap. It's kind of ebbed and flowed here and there, but Whitmer has just been on it today. And he's been so impressive. Again, second in the faux point standings that have been, we're not really tracking points in this series, not at least this one, but of course, we do kind of know where things would pan out with the GT World Challenge America points format. Whitmer would be second coming into this race, behind Heitkotter by quite a ways, but this is certainly a winning performance today.
I think it's worth reiterating. We talked about it earlier, but in case folks are just joining us and wondering how a champion will be crowned, we've got one more race weekend. Looking ahead to next week, we'll be at Kyalami in South Africa. Beautiful track. It was great to see it on the Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli schedule last year. It was the first international sports car race that's taken place there in a very long time, and it had been renovated quite drastically. I understand it was really a splendid trip. Everyone seemed to really enjoy it. So that's where we're headed next week, and the plan is to take the top 5 finishers from previous races this year and lock them into the championship race, to have a qualifying race as well, and an indeterminate amount of drivers will make it from that qualifying race into the championship race and have a chance to fight it out for the championship. As I think we saw Whitmer get kind of loose there at the exit of Hell Corner, and Peril is lurking in the background.
Yeah, I want to go back and take a look. We just heard that there was a big issue with Toby Grahovic, and here's a look at it. Oh, right in the cutting, and that's Ule, and that's JT Tammy, as they all got hung up, and this is exactly what you don't want to see. There is Robbie Montanola going around the outside. This is the worst place to get stopped. There goes Shelby Blackstock, and Ule just absolutely gets the short end of the stick here. Oh man, more issues.
In there.
The 415 piles in. Oh man, Dela Cruz and Tammy. Oh, what a mess.
Well, then we talked about it. That is the nature of racing at Bathurst. You get sideways right there, and that corner is totally blind for anyone coming up that hill. They don't know what exactly awaits them. Even if they know there's a stopped car there, they don't know exactly what's going to be there when they come around the corner. So it's unavoidable to some extent. Really a shame, especially for Ule, who had a great race going. And that's that replay.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Yeah, Whitmer had his hands full there, just used a bit too much of that curbing, and Perril's as close as I can remember him being. I think that is Peril right there in that shot.
So yeah,
or that might have been a lapped car.
I think Perril's back 2.7, so it is Peril right there. So 2.7, that is the smallest gap that we've seen. Whitmer giving up a little bit of time, but a big pile up through the cutting. And I'm surprised we didn't see that earlier in the race here, Ryan. So that's actually pretty impressive that we got almost 50 minutes without a major incident like that. But certainly for the 333, not the race that not the way he wanted to end this race. Is see Kevin Anderson now putting pressure on Pesic, who I believe has served his penalty. No drive-through tag next to his name right now. So this is a battle for ninth.
That's interesting that he didn't lose any ground. Maybe that had something to do with that big crash, but then again, there's Ulay up ahead of him still, so I'm a little confused as to how that could have happened. We see Miller is back in 12th. He served a drive-through just before, and those two were right together when that happened. I know he missed pit lane, so he could have lost some time there, but a little unsure about how all that sorted itself out. Interesting to see that Weeks is still in the middle of this fight, and now he's up on the back of Miller, just outside of the top 10. Actually, that wasn't Weeks. I'm sorry, that was my mistake there. I misidentified that car.
Yeah, so it looks like that right behind you. You're looking at 12th place Patrick Byrne. This is actually for position here. Byrne, there's a lot of damage to the windshield of this car, but chasing down 11th place John Miller after he served his penalty, and takes a look to driver's left. And apexing, maybe a late apex to get a run up the hill here. Porsche versus Bentley in the number 9.
Yeah, the Porsche very defensive there, covering the inside and trying to force Patrick to go the long way around. And this is a big car, this Bentley. It's hard to find a gap. Looked to the inside, but there really wasn't a gap there. And now he's going to have to tuck in line.
Interestingly, your intuition was correct, Ryan. The 40 of Pesic did not come to pit lane. That drive-through penalty was clear.
Interesting.
So I'm not sure why that was the case, but looks like he will continue to roll in 9th place right now as we continue to watch the battle for now 10th place.
Well, that does put my mind at ease a little bit, because I was trying to do the mental arithmetic here and figure out exactly how that was going to work out, that he was going to be able to retain that possession. Burn a little too much curb there. Did he get in the wall?
I think he did. He caught the wall slightly. You see in front, there's Kevin Bohm in the number 90 car. And I believe that we only have a handful of cars on the lead lap still. Bohm, he's back to 4th. He had an issue, and there's some damage on this car as well. So let's go back and see what happened to the 90. Kevin Bohm was running on a podium position. Let's find out what happened to the number 90 car, if it was at the top of the hill or elsewhere on the circuit.
Everything looks okay on the car at the moment, so good job finding the replay spot here. We'll be curious to see where exactly it goes wrong.
Then, big slip up right here. He's behind. Is that Anderson in the 40? Oh, right there, caught the wall and down the hill.
Ooh.
That was a big hit there for Kevin Bohm.
Yes, it was. I think just got caught out by the lap traffic ahead of him. Sometimes you lose your sight lines a little bit, you lose your rhythm. That's all it takes.
And you're analyzing the damage on that car. It's not huge. It's not what I recommend having, but it's not race ending. Again, that's concrete. That's not an easy wall to hit. You'd be better off with a tire barrier, but no such walls of that sort here at Mount Panorama.
And the way that the field is spread out, even if he's running at a reduced pace, he should still be able to bring home a respectable finish, assuming everything goes well. Still running in 4th, it appears, right now. So that's good news for Bohm, that he should be able to recover and get a decent finish. Here's Ulay, who was so had so much misfortune there when he got caught behind Grahovic, who spun just in front of him and lost so much ground. He was running in the top 5 at the time, and you can see now back in 12th.
Yeah, that was probably the worst scenario for the 333. And the problem is that, you can't really blame Grahovic for not moving, because really your one responsibility as a spun car, especially in that area of the circuit, is to not move, to be predictable and not back up into traffic. And he tried to move and tagged Robbie Montanola, who you see chasing Brennan now. But really, there was a no-win situation there for everybody behind that incident. And Ulay really on the short end of the stick, just the wrong place. And he couldn't reverse because he can't back up around a blind corner. That's just asking for disaster.
Sure, exactly. And like we said, that's the nature of racing at Bathurst. You're going to have moments like that, and the guys who win these races are the ones who get lucky and don't have them in front of them by and large. So Ulay not so fortunate here today. Still back up on his horse, though, with less than 10 minutes remaining and trying to chase down Patrick Byrne to get one more spot before it's all said and done.
Checking in on Colin Mullen in 7th place in the number 4. Nice recovery for the penalty that he had earlier. And that McLaren looking pretty sporty right now. And it's a little ways up to find Shelby Blackstock, but who's had a pretty good day in 6th. But Mullen again last week at Barcelona had a good run going there, had some contact and a similar outcome. Didn't quite get the result he deserved, but he's been really practicing a lot, putting a lot of time and effort in, just like the majority of the drivers in this field, but Mullen especially. If you follow him on Instagram, you can get a lot of those updates and follow him along on his sim racing journey here as we wait for real racing to return shortly.
Yeah, he's raced just about everything you could imagine, open wheel cars and sports cars, different kinds of sports cars as well. And I've been remiss in not mentioning his ride with LA Honda World here over in another paddock when I've talked about some of his exploits here on recent broadcasts, which have included racing minis. It's now you can add the TCR Honda to the mix, and then racing the McLaren GT4 and GT4 America, and now stepping into the GT3 variant of that here this year in GT Rivals, and doing a nice job. It's not been a clean run today. He's had some bad luck along the way, but still in position as things stands to come out with a top 10.
And this McLaren, every time I see this, and you know, I'm not supposed to have favorites, but this is my favorite car. I love how this thing looks. It's so swoopy, and it's a brand new platform and a brand new car for this season, and boy is it pretty. It's very Batmobile-esque out there. It really is a true supercar, and it looks great out there, battling with the rest of the field, which you know, it has cars from everything from, you know, Nissan GTR all the way up to this and the Bentleys, and the diversity is spectacular. And Mullen is the lone. Actually, there is one other McLaren out there down in 23rd, but the lone McLaren inside the top 20 right now as he runs in 7th.
And the predecessor to this car was quite successful, but it does sound like this was a pretty major step forward, and it was fast right away. I believe it had a chance of winning the Gulf 12 Hours on debut, which McLaren was, as memory serves, and I could be wrong here, it's been a little while, but I believe they basically ran that as more or less a test, an endurance test. They had hopes of having a good result, and were kind of blown away at just how fast that thing was in that race against a pretty international field. I think they had some kind of mechanical issue late in the race that deprived them of a representative result, but nevertheless, it's been a fast car since the start is the point of this, and would love to see more of them, especially in the States, and if we could get one of them in GT World Challenge America powered by AWS, boy, that would be quite a welcome sight.
So Colin Mullen in the number 4 car heads onto the back straightaway and really having a good run down the hill. You actually saw him adjust the ABS as well, and the drivers have in-car adjustments that they can do, traction control ABS, to kind of get your car to handle better. The track has been warming up since the sun has risen here as well, so of course the grip levels are constantly changing. Less than 5 minutes remaining in this race as Carl Whitmer has led every single lap of this race, still has a 3.5 second gap over Perro.
This has been a tremendous performance from Carl. We knew he had the single lap pace coming into this race. It was clear in qualifying, it was clear in practice. I was not sure how it would stack up over the course of 60 minutes. Now, we're not there yet, still 5 minutes and change to go, but when you've got the likes of Peril and Heidkotter behind you, who've been so fast in this championship, Heidkotter in particular, who's only been denied a win once so far this season. Peril's only been with us a couple of times, but is featured at the front in both and has a tremendous sim racing background. I think to keep guys like that behind says everything that needs to be said. Heidkotter clearly still on it, dropping a wheel there on corner exit, trying to push, but he is in podium contention once again, and if he's able to finish there, it would mean all but one race this season he's finished on the podium.
Make sure that you enter to win the giveaways brought to you by ASUS Republic of Gamers and Skip Barber Racing School. You can enter in the chat off to the right side of your screen or below, depending on your platform that you're on. Of course, ASUS giving away a bezel-free set, a bezel-free kit. Those very handy little things. If you got triple screens, it's a great thing to win, so make sure you give that a try. Or a one-day Skip Barber Racing School. And of course, Skip Barber, a partner with GT World Challenge America. And a lot of drivers have utilized the Skip Barber Racing School up in their climb. I know that at least the ones that I know of doing it, and Ryan, you could probably attest to this, is Shelby Blackstock has participated in that, and many others in the field and in GT World Challenge America have utilized that service in their climb.
interesting that I believe Shelby told me he and Trent Hidman went through the program together, and they're co-drivers this year in GT World Challenge America. But guys like Ryan Hunter-Ray and Juan Pablo Montoya both are graduates of the Skip Barber Racing School. There's others, of course, that I'm forgetting here. I can actually personally attest to it. I had a great experience at the Skip Barber Racing School. So it's a great way to get into race car, get some quality instruction, and learn what it takes to be fast. I think it's one thing everyone sits on the couch and wonders, can I do it? And maybe doesn't understand just how much technique goes into it. And the guys who are fast, whether it's on the sim or in real life, they've mastered that craft in Skip Barber and can really help you figure out what it is you need to be doing if you're looking for a little extra speed at a driving event or on sim racing or whatever the case may be.
There's Ben Waddell in the 99 in 17th. That Nissan GTR looking very rough around the edges. He's got Alec Udell behind him, who has been running somewhat faster laps, a tenth quicker last time. These guys fight for 17th spot with only a couple minutes remaining. Probably 2 or 3 laps for these drivers. See both of them drop wheels at the exit of Murray's corner, but Udell putting the pressure on.
Udell has to be frustrated because we've seen him running top 10 times, right? We saw him running right behind that battle between Pesic and Miller earlier in the race, and he looked faster than those two, and they were well within the top 10 at that point. So not sure exactly what went wrong to undo Alex Day, but he finds himself far further down the running order than I think he expected, and that's disappointing when you have a car that you know is very fast. Here's our leader, Carl Whitmer, very close to the walls, still pushing hard, and he needs to, because even with 2 minutes left, coming around, I believe it'll be the white flag next time by, even still, Carl has to push because he's got 2 hungry guys, 2 very fast guys behind him.
Well, earlier today at about 3 o'clock Eastern when this all started, we didn't know if we were even going to get a race in today with some technical issues behind the scenes. Again, we want to thank everybody at Kunos and Assetto Corsa Competizione, and of course everyone from GT World Challenge America who behind the scenes got everything sorted and fixed, albeit on a slightly delayed schedule. We are here and racing, and we have completed 58.5 minutes of racing, and the only reason we've been able to do that is because of the hard people working behind the scenes. So I really appreciate everyone getting us the opportunity to race this afternoon here, Ryan, as we close in on the white flag. And again, this round will count. We thought we were going to have to reschedule. Not the case. So Whitmer and Peril and Heitkotter going to get to podium here after Heitkotter couldn't even get into the session earlier today. So he's now on the podium.
That's a great point, because he was one of the ones locked out, and at the last minute we were able to get the problem resolved, at least to the point that we could get the race run. He was able to get in the session, limited practice time, at least here today. I suspect he's been practicing beforehand, but he gets in, able to put in a decent lap in qualifying and get up into podium contention as they run. And I don't think anyone's happier than Carl Whitmer that we were able to get this race in. He's done a great job showing his quality at the front of this field. 2 very accomplished real-world and sim racers behind him, and he has not succumbed to the pressure one bit.
Up the mountain straight for the final time. White flag is in the air for the race leader. And it's about 4 seconds back to find David Peril, who has been a top 5 contender ever since he started racing at Suzuka a few weeks ago. Victory, though, has eluded him in that Ferrari 488, but for Carl Whitmer, victory has also eluded him. He's been so consistent this season, finishing top 10 in every race so far. The only other driver to do that, Brian Heitkotter, in the number 5. But today, for Whitmer, he's got to make one more trip down the mountain before he'll pick up his first checkered flag of the season. What an impressive drive this has been.
Yeah, let's keep close eyes on him here, because as we've seen throughout the course of this 60 minutes, it can go wrong in any number of ways, but it looks like he's got clear track ahead of him here through Skyline, this left, right, and then back on the brakes here, back to the left, back to the right, back to the left one more time here. Don't want to get too far left because you've got this crucial downhill left-handed corner. Slow, 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 off the brakes, roll onto the throttle, slow car up ahead. He's going to be aware of that. And here's that long Conrad straight running down to that ever dangerous chase. But I do believe the most dangerous part of the lap is now behind it.
Carl Whitmer has done nothing but perfection today. He's gotten through lap traffic, lead lap traffic. He's done everything that he needed to do to stay safe here at the mountain. It's not easy to do as he works by even a lap traffic on the final lap. It's not easy to run 60 minutes at Bathurst without touching anything or anybody, but he has done it. The car, not a scratch on that beautiful red Acura NSX. Final corner for Carl Whitmer. Victory has eluded him all season, not today. Whitmer rounds the final corner, checkered flag for the 22, and Carl Whitmer wins at Mount Panorama Circuit. David Perrell, second place behind him in the 111, and Brian Heidkotter has won so many times this season. Didn't get the practice he probably needed. He'll come back in third place. Certainly not a bad race at all, though. P3 for the 5.
Well, great job for him. I'm sure he'll be disappointed a little bit not to pick up the win. He's won so regularly in this championship so far, but nevertheless, a great drive to the podium, especially given the connection issues that started our day.
Here's Kevin Bowman, the number 90, had some mid-race issues at the top of the hill near Skyline, slipped up, had a crash, but got the car back rolling. It will be a top 5 result for Kevin Bohm today in the CrowdStrike Mercedes. Across the line, he will go in JT Tammy. We have not really talked about him a whole lot today. A pretty quiet race for him, and sometimes, Ryan, the quiet races are the best ones. He will come home in 5th, or it looks like there might have been a battle here for 7th. No, that's just timing and scoring inconsistency there. So Colin Mullen, Shelby Blackstock, 7th and 6th, respectively. Kevin Anderson, it looks like he'll come across the line. He was a lap down, so his race will be over. But our last driver on the lead lap will, I believe, be the 7th place number 4 car of Mullen. But a good race for him, even with a shaky start.
Yeah, good job to overcome that shaky start, like you mentioned, and bring the car home in a top 10. I think he'll be reasonably happy with that. Unfortunately, it's not a top 5, so that doesn't lock him into the championship race next week, and I don't believe he has a top 5 yet. I could be mistaken on that, but that would leave him in a position where he would have to race his way in, because we are going to be crowning our GT Rivals champion next week, and that is our format. Top 5 finishers from previous races get an automatic bid. The rest of them, you got to race your way into that championship race.
Final corner for Mullen, and looks like that should round out the rest of the field. Checkered flags for the Andretti Autosport number 4. What a race we saw today, though. I don't think anybody was disappointed by what we saw. We're just happy we were able to run this race from the darkness into the daylight. And a really solid round of racing. We had a couple penalties, but honestly, Ryan, I've been really, really amazed by how clean the racing was today out there. Only one major stack up in the uphill. Everybody else just single and dual car incidents.
I'm sure there's a few folks who will say that we might have missed something, and then there was some contact that they were a part of. But I think you're right, by and large, especially given the fact we started in darkness. The race did have a very clean start to it. All these drivers should be commended for that, and I'd say it was pretty much classic Bathurst. There was an element of survival for sure, but plenty of action mixed in.
Here is a look at your finishing order. Of course, it was Carl Whitmer's number 22 Acura NSX GT3 Evo that was at the top of the board at the end of the day by 3.1 seconds. Perrell was just shy. If he had another half a tenth of pace, he could have run down that number 22, Ryan, but not quite close enough. Heitkotter, Bohm, Tammy, the rest of your top 5, then Blackstock, Mullen, Pesic, Anderson, and Miller, another top 10 result for his Porsche 991 GT3R.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. Perrell just, he might have been a little bit quicker, marginally quicker, but not enough to chop into the deficit, and he never got the big break in lap traffic that I think he was hoping for to be able to get to Carl and challenge for the lead there. And Heitkotter, I think it took him just a little too long to get up to third. By the time he got there, the deficit was too great, and he wasn't going to be able to factor in. But look at the gap he pulled on Bohm behind him. It was pretty significant in the range of 15 seconds. So or make that 25 seconds. So did a good job there to solidify that third place. Just didn't quite have what it took to run down the top 2.
And take a look down the rest of the order. Guy Cosmo, not a great day for him in his Bentley Continental GT3. He'll come back in 21st. Udell, another disappointing, well, I shouldn't say another, a disappointing run for him today at Mount Panorama. And, of course, Nelson Mason with the issue that he had. That was not the way he wanted to end his day. But time for interviews. I think we've got some drivers here already, and it looks like we've got Ryan Marine standing by with David Perrell.
Well, David, a second place run once again here this week, but this one was around Bathurst. This is one of the more challenging tracks you'll ever find, and you had to fight your way through some traffic early on. What was your race like from where you were sitting?
In the end, a little bit frustrating that I couldn't quite bridge the gap. He did a great job to keep me at bay, to be honest. His pace was very consistent, which is what I was kind of relying on. My qualifying is always a little bit sketchy, but my race consistency usually brings me closer. There were 1 or 2 points there when I thought that was going to happen, but he just held me off. He did a great job, so well done to him. Also, thanks to my engineer, Chris, who's from real life. I use him in these races so we can prepare for the real thing. And also to Kessel. As you saw, I was racing in their 20-year livery of 20 years of racing. So it was an awesome race. I mean, this track is amazing to to race around here. I can only imagine how awesome it must be in real life. And thanks to you guys for organizing it. And bummer that you had those server issues, but it wasn't in your control. So well done for handling that so well.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us. We appreciate it. It was good having you with us. Take us back to the start of the race, though, starting in the darkness. What kind of challenge did that present?
Luckily, I've been doing a shootout for something at the beginning of this week, and it happened to be at this track in the dark for pretty much. They didn't have the time was not multiplied, so it was pretty much the whole hour was in the dark. So when we got set on the grid in the dark, I was actually quite happy, and yeah, we had a decent start. I got pushed wide by the Audi. I didn't have anywhere to move really. I was on the outside. I wanted to slip into third. But the Audi was closing that door because he wanted to get down the inside. So I was lucky to keep it out the wall and then lucky to stay. I think I was in fourth at that point. And then the two guys in front unfortunately had a crash going down the hill. And I just kind of backed off a little bit. I mean, the key thing in sim racing is to survive that first lap. Don't be aggressive. Let everyone make the mistakes around you if possible. And then try and pick up the pieces. Lap 2, lap 3, you can start to push. And that's what I tried to do.
And now from one classic track to another, we head to your home country of South Africa next week at Kyalami. How excited are you to get to race there, even in the virtual world? And do you have any home track advantage you'll be relying on?
The only advantage is that I did do the Kyalami 9-hour in real life at the end of last year in the IGTC. Track is amazing. It was the first time I drove at it since 2008. And it's high speed. It's really, really fun to drive around. And I think we're going to have a good race there. Turn 1 and I think it's turn 10 are good overtaking opportunities. And I'm going to try to do my best to, first of all, pitch up, because, you know, these races happen at night for me on a Sunday. But also to finally get one position better. So let's see how it goes.
We look forward to having you there. Thank you so much, and congratulations on another podium result.
Thank you so much, guys.
I'm standing by with Brian Heidkotter. It was third place tonight. A little bit of trouble getting into the server to get some practice, Brian, but it wasn't quite a race victory, but third place, a podium, and it's been a great season. You got to be pretty happy with where you're standing at the end of the day.
Yeah, no complaints, really. You know, today was one of those days where a lot of things just don't go your way, and that kind of happens in racing. But I just basically survived my way into the top 3, really. Congrats to David and Carl. They had really good pace. You know, even when you're running up front here, you know, the mountain can bite at any time, and traffic is always not the easiest to deal with here in particular. So they did a great job. I was a little bit unfortunate in not being able to get into the practice server, so I got into qualifying like 5 minutes late. So qualifying was basically my warm-up, and I had one traffic-free lap, so it's not ideal, but you know, I did okay. I think I started 6th or so, and the first lap was, yeah, wow, really tight, as expected. I think I got shuffled back to 8th or something like that. And then from then on, I was just trying to kind of survive my way forward and keep pushing. Nick had I'm going to call it a pinball moment, coming down the mountain in front of me, and I did my best to avoid him, but once you crest that first hill at the very top, you're committed all the way down that hill. So I wasn't quite able to slow it down enough to avoid him, and I was carrying damage after that, which hurt my pace a little bit, but that's racing. It's still a podium. I'll take it.
It's not often that we start races, you know, really at the crack of dawn or before the crack of dawn and run into the daylight. Is that dynamic any different than running from the daylight into the darkness?
You know, maybe in my case, since I didn't really have, well, I guess it's the same for everybody. Nobody kind of warmed up in the dark, but it's a little bit jarring at first because you're used to, you know, practicing and qualifying in daylight conditions, and then it goes dark for the race, and plus you're in traffic. So some of your sight lines are a little bit different, or maybe blocked by the car in front in the dark, but it's part of the challenge that I enjoy about endurance racing. You know, conditions change all the time, lighting changes, so it's really the same for everybody in the end, and it's good to have that kind of new and different and interesting challenge from time to time.
Hey, Brian, thanks for talking to us. Good luck next week at Kyalami. We wish you the best.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure I'm going to make Kyalami yet.
Oh, man.
Fingers crossed I will. But if not, just thank you to you guys and Champion Motorsports and SRO Americas for allowing me to run. Thanks, guys.
Hopefully we'll see you out there, Brian. Thanks so much. It looks like we've got JT Tammy standing by with Ryan Marine.
Well, JT, another good run for you. Solid, but you were in the thick of things. Can you take us through the highs and lows of your race?
Yeah, it was mainly about staying out of trouble today. I'm glad we got to do the race. It was a blast, coming in, starting in the darkness, getting that sunrise at the top of the hill. I mainly just tried to stay out of trouble, stay off the walls, and stay consistent. Tried to keep up with one of the other CMS drivers, Brandon, and we were doing very well up until he ran into a problem with lap traffic. Couple close calls, but other than that, just holding on.
What were some of the scary moments for you?
Coming up to Skyline, right when the sunrise was just full in your eyesight, there's a car backwards at the apex, completely stopped, Bentley, I think, and that caught me out there. I was able to avoid that, but yeah, that came out of nowhere.
What has been the thrill of this experience, getting to run with some of the best real-world GT drivers anywhere in the world and sharing the track with them, and also some of your sim racing compatriots?
It's been an incredible opportunity. I can't thank Josh, David, and Robbie enough. I mean, this is a dream come true. We're sim racers, and we have that aspiration. Hey, maybe one day that can be us on track, running against these drivers, and it's just been awesome to run against them in the sim racing world. And I'm blown away every week.
Well, it's been fun having you as part of the series. Thank you so much for your time, and congrats on a great result.
Thank you so much, guys.
All right, and we're going to see if Carl Whitmer is here now, and if he is, great. If not, we'll try to talk to him next week. Hey, Carl, you got a copy? Doesn't look like we do. So what we're going to do is before next week's race at Kyalami, we're going to have Carl up with us in the booth. I think that's what we'll do instead. Carl, if you can hear us, hey, congratulations on your race. We're going to get to talk to you next week at Kyalami. So let's talk about next week, Ryan, as we transition into our season finale next week. That's going to be a totally different environment. Tell me what's going on next Sunday.
Well, it'll be exciting. We probably won't have the crazy thunderstorms that the real-life 9-hour had in its return last year. But Kyalami, one of those classic circuits, especially if you followed Formula One back in the 70s and 80s. And it looks a little bit different than if that's the last time you saw it. There were some major renovations that took place here that led to it once again welcoming an international sports car event. There hadn't been one in quite some time prior to last year, and by all accounts, those changes have been really well received. Seems like there's a real momentum in the motorsports community in South Africa that is bubbling up in support of that, and IGTC racing there was a huge feather in the cap of that new ownership group at the circuit that's put so much work into getting it prepared. So I think we heard David talk about it earlier, David Perrell talk about the challenges of that track, some very high speed stuff, some technical portions as well. It's going to be fun, no question about that, and a perfect place to cap off our championship, just like the IGTC capped off its championship last season.
So next Sunday at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time will be our season finale for the 2020 GT World Challenge America GT Rivals. And again, thank you to everybody who's been watching from home in this very uncertain time. And again, if you're enjoying what you're liking or what you're watching, make sure you hit the like button here on YouTube, or if you're on Facebook, if you're on Twitch, make sure you follow. And again, make sure you follow GT World Challenge America on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get updates all throughout the week on news going in to next Sunday's event. Thanks again. Make sure that you check out our sponsors. Again, Pirelli Tires and 511 and all the people that make this happen, including Kunos and Assetto Corsa Competizione, Robbie and Julian behind the scenes, making sure everything went off without a hitch today. Even when we started with a hitch, we undid it. So thanks to everybody behind the scenes. And Ryan, thanks to you for joining me here in the booth for a little bit of an extended afternoon. And we'll see you next week in Kyalami.
Pleasure as always.
All right, that'll do it for us. Thank you again for watching. We'll see you next week for the season finale of GT Rivals.